Chapter 1838 Untitled. Chapter 1838 Untitled. Sister, aren't you able to tell where treasures are hidden? How? Sapphira was so confident because she trusted Ranmil in that aspect. Ranmil felt utterly defeated. 2 times in a row, she could tell that the treasure was on the other side, but when she opened the door, I don't know. Ranmil frowned. Meanwhile, Fengwu was impressed by Ranmil's ability. That was because Ranmil found the lattice with the purple sun sword the first time, and the blowing snow swordplay the second time. She really was a blessed girl. Well, she's not as lucky as you. The white fairy glanced at Fengwu. Fengwu nodded. If she had been the first one you met, would you have helped her? The white fairy raised an eyebrow. Take a wild guess. Fengwu said without hesitation. No, you wouldn't have. The white fairy asked, why? Fengwu said, women can become enemies especially if they're both beautiful women of the same type. The 2 of you are the same type. Therefore you won't like her. Hey, watch your sharp tongue. You don't need to be so blunt. The white fairy rolled her eyes at Fengwu. Fengwu chuckled. If Ranmil couldn't find any treasure, Master Ju and Sapphira had even less of a chance. They didn't find anything either. The 3rd round started. I give up, said the second prince. He just stood there. Because if he participated, his spiritual essence would be weakened again. And this test was just getting started. I give up too. Zhuo Qingxian made the same choice. After they gave up, it was Fenglu's turn. Fenglu gritted her teeth. I want to try my luck again. Then, as it turned out again, she didn't get anything. Feng Sang said, I give up. Feng Yuran said, me too. Duga Yamo gave it some thought and shook her head. I'll give up too. Duga Mingxi thought the same. So it was once more Feng Sun's turn. Hey, are you giving up already? There is still so much good stuff here. And you want to give them all up? This is such a valuable opportunity. You're going to waste it. Everyone kept their gazes on Feng Sun. He had been waiting for his turn. The first time, he found the purple sun sword. The second time, he found the swordplay. His return rate was unbelievably high, but for the others it was 0. Dugu Yamo said, enough with the crap, just roll the dice. If you find what you want, Feng Lu, and I will get on our knees. Feng Sun was very confident in his luck now. Sure. I'll find the blowing snow swordplay this time. Feng Sun patted his chest. The others didn't know what to say. They wondered how long he could keep bragging about it. On the other side of the shelves, the white fairy glanced at Fengwu. Are you still going to help him? Fengwu smiled. Why not? In fact, Fengwu felt sorry for Feng Sun's luck, or lack of it, for had it not been for her, he wouldn't have found anything. Chapter 1839, Unbelievable Luck 1. Chapter 1839, Unbelievable Luck 1. When the door opened again, SSSS. Everyone thought they were going insane. What the hell? This isn't happening. It's just not possible. How could they not be shocked? A second ago, Feng Sun was bragging about finding the blowing snow swordplay in his next round, and now, there it was, in the lattice he chose. How was this possible? Everyone else had found practically nothing. You, Feng Sun, how did you do it? Tell us. Have you been cheating? Do you own this place or what? Everyone was so agitated that they all yelled at the same time. It was a mess. Of course it would be. It was ridiculous. Seeing how agitated everyone was, Feng Sun was baffled as well. He didn't expect that he would find the blowing snow swordplay. He was only bluffing. However, now that everyone was so jealous, of course Feng Sun wasn't going to show how surprised he was. Throwing his hair over his shoulder, he said in satisfaction, I told you so. You have to openly say it if you want Xiao Wu's help. Well, that's what you get for being so proud. Now you can envy me all you want, ha 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 ha. He then handed the blowing snow swordplay to Xian Yi. I'll give you 1,000 low-grade spiritual stones, said Dugu Mingxi. I'll buy it from you. Feng Sun paused and glanced at Dugu Mingxi. Feng Yuran said, I'll pay you 2,000. Dugu Mingxi threw a dirty look at Feng Yuran and raised the price. I'll give you 3,000. Feng Yuran said, 5,000. 10,000. They heard a cold, authoritative voice. They all turned in the direction of the voice and saw that it was Master Ju. As it turned out, the mysterious, aloof Master Ju also had something he wanted. However, Feng Sun smiled and said, "When did I say I want to sell it?" He then stuffed it in Xian Yi's hands. "Take it and cultivate with it before someone else begins to have ideas." Xian Yi put the blowing snow swordplay in his pocket without saying a word. The others found it idiotic, because Feng Sun had just given the blowing snow swordplay away, as if it wasn't worth a penny. It was Xian Yi's turn next, and this time, Feng Wu didn't help. Xian Yi didn't find anything. Feng Sun asked, "Who's next?" Ranmil looked at Feng Sun in an enigmatic way. She then smiled. "Young Lord Feng, may I ask for a favor?" Asked Feng Sun. He didn't like Sapphiro, but Ranmil had left a good impression on him. Therefore, he beamed at her and said, "Your Highness, what do you need? Do tell." Ranmil seemed kind, naive, and innocent. She smiled. "Young Lord Feng, since you're so lucky, how about you roll the dice for me?" Wow! The others were all excited. That was right. If Feng Sun was so lucky, why shouldn't they ask him to roll the dice for them? If he didn't want to, they could always pay him to do it. On the other side of the shelves, Feng Wu frowned. She was very perceptive, and girls knew other girls the best. They could always tell if another girl was their friend or enemy. Chapter 1840, Unbelievable Luck, 2. Chapter 1840, Unbelievable Luck, 2. Feng Wu felt uneasy about Ranmil, but Feng Sun didn't feel that way. He found Ranmil innocent, gentle, and lovely. She had left such a good impression on Feng Sun, and he didn't think about turning her down. "Sure, I'll do it for you." Feng Sun patted his chest. "I'm very lucky, and I can get whatever I want. It's like I own this place." On the other side, Feng Wu rolled her eyes. The white fairy laughed. "Ha ha ha ha. What a silly boy. It's true then." Feng Wu asked, "What's true?" The white fairy said, "Silly boys are always happy." Feng Wu chuckled. The white fairy asked, "Are you not angry?" Feng Wu smiled a little. "Why should I be?" Soon, the white fairy saw what Feng Wu meant. Feng Sun agreed to roll the dice for Ranmil. Ranmil smiled innocently and asked, "Young Lord Feng, which number shall we get?" Feng Sun looked at Ranmil in bewilderment. "We have no control over that, do we?" Ranmil thought, "Well, I have." But she couldn't openly admit it, and could only smile at him. "Please roll them." Feng Sun asked, "Princess, what do you want?" Ranmil checked the rewards on the wall. The purple sun sword and the swordplay were gone. So were the blowing snow sword and its matching swordplay. There were 4 5-star treasures left. They were the turtle diagram, the glowing cloud stroll, the martial elixir, and the replacement talisman. Of the 4, the replacement talisman was the most precious one, because it could give one an extra life. The replacement talisman then. Ranmil smiled at Feng Sun. "I'll owe you a very big favor if you can find it for me." The replacement talisman. The others all looked at Ranmil enviously. If she really could find it. In a critical moment like this, the talisman would be even more precious than the swords and swordplays, because it was an extra life. "Try something else." Feng Sun shook his head. The answer surprised Ranmil a little. Feng Sun said, "I will find that talisman, but not now." Ranmil asked, "When then?" Feng Sun said, "I'll get it when it's my own turn, because I can't give it to you." Ranmil smiled. "I understand. It's an extra life, and it's only normal that you don't want to give it away." Feng Sun frowned. "It's not for myself." Ranmil grew even more curious. "Who is it for then? The girl you love?" Feng Sun frowned. He had thought that Ranmil was gentle, pure, and innocent, but the way she pressed him irritated him. He wasn't exactly good at being subtle, and he didn't hide the impatient look on his face. "Are you going to roll the dice or not?" Ranmil had been well protected since she was little, and no one had ever been so impatient with her. She was upset by this. Normally, Sapphiro would step out to tell Feng Sun off, but for some unknown reason, Sapphiro only stood there as her eyes darted around, as if she didn't notice how awkward things were. Chapter 1841. Chapter 1841. Unbelievable Luck 3. At the same time, Feng Wu kept her unblinking gaze on Ran Mill. She had always firmly believed that no matter how good an actor a person was, in the event of an unexpected confrontation, they wouldn't have enough time to put their mask on, and that was the easiest moment to spot their true self. If Ran Mill was as innocent as she was said to be, and knew little of worldly affairs, her reaction should reflect her true feelings accordingly as an inexperienced girl. For instance, she could look embarrassed and flustered, and she might blush. However, Ran Mill only stiffened for a brief moment. She recovered almost immediately, and smiled a little. Of course. Please roll the dice. Young Lord Feng is so lucky that I almost want to borrow some of his luck. As she spoke, her hand casually brushed against Feng Sun's arm. Well, that's interesting. The white fairy chuckled when she saw this. Feng Wu looked at her in bewilderment. The white fairy said, "That princess touched the silly boy's arm. She was actually trying to turn her luck around by taking his." Turn her luck around? Feng Wu frowned. Is that a standard operation? Although that wasn't the expression the white fairy would use, she knew what Feng Wu meant. She found Feng Wu's words quite novel at times. The white fairy said, "That's right. That princess looks so innocent, but she has so many tricks. She definitely has a capable master. This is very interesting." On the other side of the shelves, all eyes were on Feng Sun. When he rolled the dice for himself, he could find everything he wanted. Would he be equally lucky when he helped other people? If that was the case, the others became a little excited. Feng Sun got 2 and 2 this time. He said happily, 22 a good number. It's Xiao Wu's favorite. Feng Wu was speechless when she saw what was in lattice number 22. That was because it indeed contained something nice, very nice. It was the replacement talisman. She said, "This Ran Mill really is unbelievably lucky. Didn't you see her take another person's luck?" The white fairy smirked. Feng Wu said, "Are you saying that she stole luck from more than one person?" The white fairy nodded. She's only a spiritual lord now, and can only steal luck from a handful of people. As her cultivation level rises, she'll be able to take more and more. The consequences will be unimaginable. Feng Wu asked, "What will happen to the people whose luck is stolen?" The white fairy gave her a half smile. "What do you think? The mildest case is that the person will be extremely unlucky for a few years, until they slowly regain their luck. In severe cases, however, the person may be overwhelmed by ill fortune which will haunt them until they die in misery." Feng Wu frowned. She's hurting innocent lives. The white fairy chuckled. For those who practice such evil techniques, the first lesson they learn is to show little regard for other people's lives. Innocent lives are the last thing on her mind. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Putting her hands behind her back, the white fairy smiled. "I think I know who her master is." Feng Wu asked, "Who?" The white fairy said, "Red March, the head of the 5 Poisons sect." Feng Wu frowned. "I've never heard of this person before." Chapter 1842. Chapter 1842. Unbelievable Luck 4. The white fairy said, "She's a legend in her own right, but we don't have time for that right now. Although something here can suppress her ability, we'll go look for it later." Feng Wu said proudly, "It's not like I hold a grudge against Red March." The white fairy found that statement idiotic. You already want to kill her disciple, and that's a huge grudge. Aren't you worried that she'll come after you once you finish her disciple off? Feng Wu was shocked. She never said anything about killing Ran Mill. The white fairy smirked. "You're in her way now. If you don't kill her, she'll kill you. There's bound to be a war between the two of you. Do you want to be the one who dies?" Feng Wu said, "Of course not. But why would she kill me? It doesn't make any sense." Feng Wu was still talking to the white fairy when she heard approaching footsteps. They were steady, well-paced, and very reassuring. The footsteps. Everyone turned around. "Boss Jun, why are you here?" Feng Sun was the first one to cry out the words. It really was Jun Lin Yuan. He was wearing a black robe, and the deep-set features on his handsome face reminded one of a sculpture. He practically glowed. As soon as he showed up, Everyone else faded into the background. He was the only person everyone could see. It really was Jun Linyuan. No one expected Jun Linyuan to come, and they were all astonished. Well, the teenage boys were. As for the teenage girls, the pleasant surprise made them cover their mouths, and they were almost in tears. Although Feng Lu, Feng Sang, Dugu Yamo, and Sapphiro had claimed that they were no longer in love with Jun Linyuan, when he showed up, they couldn't hide their reactions. Wow! Even the White Fairy, who had always been very picky, was impressed by the teenager. She gave Feng Wu a nudge. Feng Wu felt awkward. Earlier, to stop the White Fairy from thinking of her as a love rival, Feng Wu had stated over and over again that she liked Jun Linyuan. She had even drawn his picture on the wall to prove it. She couldn't take that back now. Otherwise, it made her shudder just to think what would happen when the White Fairy became angry. Hence, Feng Wu raised her chin and said proudly, "He's Jun Linyuan." The White Fairy asked, "Is he the teenager you're in love with?" Feng Wu forced herself to say, "That's right. It's him." The White Fairy teased her. "Well, you've got good taste. He's not Chu Tianxiao, but he's on the same level." Feng Wu wanted to roll her eyes. The White Fairy really thought highly of Chu Tianxiao. Yes, he was handsome, but he was nowhere near as good-looking as Jun Linyuan. "What? You disagree?" The White Fairy snorted. "You think Chu Tianxiao is the best, and I think Jun Linyuan is the best. Problem?" The White Fairy snorted. "Whatever. But you do have good taste. Look." The White Fairy kept watching the others. "Look at that girl." Feng Wu saw that she was talking about Feng Lu. "That girl in the pink dress has been saying so many mean things about you. Is that boy her lover? She's not looking at him anymore, and her eyes are glued to your lover. He's stolen her soul." Chapter 1843. Chapter 1843. Unbelievable Luck 5. "And that one in the green dress, do you see her feet? Ever since your boy entered the room, she's been inching toward him, until she's only a meter away. If everything goes as planned, she'll pretend to fall into his arms." Feng Wu saw that she was talking about Sapphiro. "And that one? And that one?" The White Fairy finally pointed at Ran Mill. "What do you think of her?" Feng Wu glanced at Ran Mill and said grumpily, "She's just standing there. Her eyes aren't glued to Jun Linyuan's face, and she's not trying to strike up a conversation. So she's not interested in him, I think." After some thought, Feng Wu said affirmatively, "Well, not everyone in the world is interested in Jun Linyuan. You can't be more wrong." The White Fairy smacked Feng Wu on the head. "Are you blind? Don't you understand?" Feng Wu looked perplexed. Resting her hands on her waist, the White Fairy said proudly, "With my years of chasing off flirtatious women, I can tell you that the pure and innocent Ranmil is the most ambitious of them all." Feng Wu said, "Really? That can't be." The White Fairy found Feng Wu's response idiotic. "Do you really not see it?" Feng Wu said, "I really don't." The White Fairy rolled her eyes at Feng Wu. "She's very capable. Look at the angle she's standing in. Was she facing the door earlier?" Feng Wu shook her head. Her profile was facing the door just then. The White Fairy asked, "What about now?" Feng Wu said, "She's at a 65-degree angle." The White Fairy nodded and said affirmatively, "That's Rammel's prettiest angle, which is why she's standing like that. Where she's standing, the light is coming in from behind her, which gives her a hazy yet magnificent effect, unlike the other girls. Look at their eyes." Feng Wu said, "They have to narrow their eyes because of the light." "What about Ranmil?" asked the White Fairy. "Because she's facing away from the light, she can open her eyes wide. Moreover, her eyes are glistening and soft, as if they've been washed with spiritual water. She didn't look that way earlier." The White Fairy smiled. When she flipped her sleeve just then, she used some eye drops so that her eyes could look so lovely. You see, while the others were all shocked for 3 whole seconds, she remained calm and took action. "Isn't she a frightening woman? Do you see how eagerly she wants your boy now?" Feng Wu thought. "Luckily, I'm not interested in Jun Linyuan." "How did you notice all that?" she asked curiously. Crossing her arms, the White Fairy said, "Because she's just like what I used to be. I know what she's going to do before she does. Feng Wu cleared her throat. The white fairy glanced at Feng Wu, and her tone turned serious. Kiddo, you're smart, but you're soft and kind deep down. Whereas she, who seems gentle and tender, is in fact ruthless. You may not be her match. As a matter of fact, there's a huge change that you'll be defeated. Chapter 1844. Chapter 1844. Jun Linyuan the Genius 1. Feng Wu clenched her fists. The white fairy said, since she has her eye on Jun Linyuan, the two of you are love rivals now. It'll be a battle of life and death. Feng Wu wanted to say that she didn't actually like Jun Linyuan. But she had made it too clear earlier, and she couldn't take back her words now. She sighed inwardly. On the other side of the shelves. Boss Jun, what are you doing here? Aren't you too advanced for this place? How did you get in? Feng Sun asked the question everyone wanted to ask. The others all looked at Jun Linyuan as well. The rule of this place was that anyone above the spiritual lord level couldn't come in, because it would break the balance. Jun Linyuan gave Feng Sun a long look and changed the subject. Are you done rolling the dice? No, of course not. Feng Sun turned his attention back to the dice. I rolled the dice for Princess Ranmil just then, and I got 22. Teehee Boss Jun, I've been very lucky today. He then showed the purple sun sword and the swordplay to Jun Linyuan and patted his chest. I found them, all by myself. And his. Feng Sun then took the blowing snow swordplay from Xian Yi's sleeve. I found this too. He had praised me all over his face. Jun Linyuan gave him an indifferent glance and said in an emotionless tone, I see. Feng Sun's enthusiasm wasn't dimmed when he said, just wait and see. I'm sure there's something good in that lattice. Right, Princess Ranmil? Ranmil took a few steps forward, until she was only a meter away from Jun Linyuan. The look in her eyes was still pure and innocent, but she didn't speak to Jun Linyuan. She didn't even try to introduce herself. She was even pretending to ignore Jun Linyuan. Young Lord Feng is right. I'm sure it'll be something nice. Thank you, my dear young lord. The people of the grassland didn't care much for formalities, but Ranmil bent her knee in the fashion of the Jumwa Empire to express her gratitude. Feng Sun was over the moon. Now here we go. He then marched to the lattice and opened the door. Whoosh! Poof! Heavy smoke erupted out of the lattice, so fast and heavy that it made one's eyes water. No matter how fast Feng Sun was, he couldn't be as fast as the smoke. Sizzle! The smoke was almost in his face, and what was more terrifying was that it was poisonous. Cough cough. Feng Sun jumped back as quickly as he could, but the smoke almost injured his eyes. He only stopped when he was dozens of meters away. Only then did he exhale. Still feeling shaken, he heaved a long sigh. That was close. It nearly got me. And that smoke was poisonous. Gosh, if I wasn't quick enough, I could have become blind. Meanwhile, the others all gave Feng Sun strange looks. Dugu Yama was the first to react and mock him. Young Lord Feng, didn't you say that you were definitely going to find something nice? Why did you find poisonous smoke, which nearly hurt you? Feng Sun blushed. It was true. He had bragged a little, but he always had an excuse. Chapter 1845. Chapter 1845. Jun Linyuan the Genius 2. First of all, I didn't roll the dice for myself, so it didn't represent my own luck. Secondly, good luck needs to be accumulated. What's wrong with me taking some time to do that? Duguyamo snorted and didn't know what to say. Feng Sun shrugged at Ranmil. Sorry, princess, for not finding anything nice for you. Ranmil looked concerned and shook her head. Young Lord Feng, there's no need to apologize. A valuable reward would only be the icing on the cake, even if you did find one. But it's not as important as your health. We should have our priorities straight. Feng Sun liked the sound of that, and Ranmil left an even better impression on him. After that, Ranmil stole a glance at the handsome teenager next to her, and saw that he hadn't even once looked in her direction. She was a little disappointed by this, but decided that she still had a lot of time. She clenched her fists a little. Then it was Master Ju's turn. Comparisons can be so cruel. The white fairy sighed emotionally. Feng Wu glanced at her in bewilderment. The White Fairy said, "This Master Zhu may look the part, handsome, aloof, powerful, and imposing. He can be considered one of the outstanding young men of your time. But that's when he's not compared with others. The moment your teenager stepped into the hall, he became the center of attention. Some people are just born to make other people envious. Master Zhu isn't the only one. The second prince looks nice, doesn't he? He seems like such a superior figure. But now, he can only throw malicious looks at Jun Linyuan secretly, and doesn't even dare meet his eyes." Well, the White Fairy shook her head with a wry smile. That's how different people can be. Feng Wu didn't find Jun Linyuan all that impressive at first, but after what the White Fairy said, she found him so much more pleasant to look at. He's not as good as you put it. But she wouldn't admit it. The White Fairy glanced at Feng Wu. Feng Wu avoided her eyes. Meanwhile, on the other side, Master Zhu failed to find anything once more. Nor did Sapphiro. So this round is over again. Feng Sun rubbed his hands eagerly. Soon, he would have another chance. Is it over? Asked Jun Linyuan. Feng Sun was intrigued. Boss Jun, do you want to play as well? Jun Linyuan had been studying the wall the whole time, as if he was interested in the prizes. Why not? He glanced at Feng Sun. Feng Sun hesitated. I thought you weren't interested in any of the stuff here. You won't need them. Jun Linyuan snorted. That's right. I'm not interested. Feng Sun asked, so why? The Crown Prince was used to speaking in riddles. Instead of answering Feng Sun's question, he went straight over to inject the spiritual essence. What? He frowned when he put his right hand on the pipe and injected his spiritual essence. Pull back, the White Fairy warned Little Phoenix. Little Phoenix immediately withdrew and returned to stand on Feng Wu's shoulder. Little Feng Wu, what kind of boyfriend do you have? The White Fairy gave Feng Wu a strange look. Chapter 1846, Jun Linyuan the Genius 3. Chapter 1846, Jun Linyuan the Genius 3. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. What? The White Fairy said. Step back if you don't want to be discovered. Oh sure. Feng Wu immediately took a few steps back. The White Fairy said, do you have any idea how remarkable your Jun Linyuan is? Feng Wu asked, what did he do now? The White Fairy said, he didn't inject any spiritual essence. Rather, he scanned all the lattices with his mental power. That is to say, he knows what's in every lattice. Feng Wu's eyes widened. How is that possible? Aren't the lattices separated by a shield? The White Fairy pulled a long face. That's right, they are. Otherwise, the others would have noticed all your little maneuvers. But who would have thought that your boyfriend is so capable? He was able to bypass the shield without destroying it. Do you know what that means? Feng Wu asked, what does it mean? The White Fairy said, it means that his cultivation level is higher than the person who set up the shield. Speaking of which, how old is he now? 16, I think? Feng Wu wasn't too sure. The White Fairy stared at Feng Wu. The look in her eyes was so fierce that her eyes popped. Feng Wu asked, well, who set it up? The White Fairy glared at Feng Wu again. Given how smart Feng Wu was, she immediately guessed the answer. Since the White Fairy had collected all the treasures here, the shield must have been. So, did you set it up? Feng Wu asked gingerly. The White Fairy snorted. Feng Wu suddenly realized something. Wait, something doesn't make sense. You said that only someone more capable than the person setting up the shield can bypass it. So that means. Feng Wu was astonished. She stared at the White Fairy so hard that her eyes popped. Because the truth was so unbelievable. The White Fairy looked away uneasily and snorted. Feng Wu didn't know what to say either. She murmured, how is that possible? My dear fairy, you used to be one of the most capable people on this continent, and Jun Linyuan is only a teenager now. How can he possibly? No, he can't be. You must have gotten something wrong. Then how do you think he got in? The White Fairy glanced at Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked perplexed. The White Fairy said, only those below the spiritual king stage can get in. How do you think he got in? Feng Wu asked how. The White Fairy said, One of the rules here is that if a spiritual king wants to get in, they have to defeat one of the ghost kings. Feng Wu stared at the white fairy with wide-open eyes. The white fairy nodded at Feng Wu, looking very serious. Feng Wu said, "This is crazy. I can't believe it. How can Jun Linyuan be? He wasn't at this level before. He disappeared for a while, and was said to be cultivating somewhere else, but it was only for a few days. How can he have achieved so much in that time? He's only 16. The white fairy looked at Fairy and snorted. "Stop singing his praises already." Feng Wu looked perplexed. The white fairy said, "I know you're happy for your own man, but you really should keep it to yourself. Aren't you worried that other people will get jealous?" Feng Wu cleared her throat. Unlike what other people thought, she and Jun Linyuan really weren't in a relationship. Chapter 1847. Jun Linyuan the Genius 4. Chapter 1847. Jun Linyuan the Genius 4. The white fairy raised her chin and said proudly, "Fine, your boy is a little bit better than mine. Satisfied?" Feng Wu chuckled. The white fairy had been saying so many good things about Chu Tianxiao that he sounded like an unrivaled man. The fact that the white fairy had admitted that Jun Linyuan was a little bit better than Chu Tianxiao was proof enough of how capable Jun Linyuan was. However, because of that, Feng Wu didn't dare move a muscle now. "Wow, His Royal Highness rolled the dice. What number is it?" "Number 5. "Boss Jun, let me check it for you." Feng Sun happily ran over to open the door. Jun Linyuan stood there, his hands crossed behind his back. His wide sleeves brushed against the ground, and he looked graceful and elegant. "Wah!" Feng Sun cried out when he opened the door. Feng Sun carefully held it with both hands, as if it was the most precious thing. "The replacement talisman. It's the replacement talisman." Feng Sun wanted to dance around. "Boss Jun, you're the best. I admire you so much." The Crown Prince glanced at Feng Sun. Boss Jun, can you do me a favor?" Feng Sun ran around Jun Linyuan like a puppy dog. "Get to the point." Jun Linyuan was very succinct. Can I have the replacement talisman?" Feng Sun asked tentatively. The Crown Prince frowned. Before he could say no, Feng Sun raised his right hand and yelled, "Boss Jun, please listen to me." "Speak," said Jun Linyuan. Feng Sun said loudly, "Of course it's not for myself. I'm so capable and well-respected that no one would dare pick on me. They would have to have a death wish. I don't need it." "Your point?" The Crown Prince grew impatient. Yes. My point is, I want to give it to Xiaowu." Feng Sun beamed at him. Immediately, many people's eyes widened. The replacement talisman could give one an extra life, but Feng Sun was going to give it to Feng Wu. Feng Lu, Feng Sang, Dugu Yamo, and Sapphiro all looked like they wanted to cry, and their eyes were filled with jealousy. Back on the other side. "Well, the silly boy is quite nice to you. He actually wants the replacement talisman for you." The white fairy gave Feng Wu a teasing look. Feng Wu rolled her eyes. "He's my god brother." The white fairy said, "Well, he's not your biological brother, is he? You were childhood friends. Don't you want him to become someone even more intimate?" Feng Wu said, "Hey." The white fairy said, There. I won't tease you anymore. If Jun Linyuan didn't exist, that teenager Feng Sun would be a fine choice. But with the existence of a teenager like Jun Linyuan, everyone else seems to fade in his presence. If he's the moon, then everyone else are just mere fireflies in comparison. Feng Sun has a brighter light than most people, but he's nothing compared with Jun Linyuan. Therefore, kiddo, pursuing Jun Linyuan may be an attractive choice, but it's full of peril as well, because 9 out of 10 girls want him. You're competing against the whole world. Feng Wu thought to herself, luckily, Jun Linyuan and I aren't what people assume we are. Chapter 1848. Chapter 1848. Jun Linyuan the Genius 5. But she wondered why she didn't feel relieved when she thought that. How strange. Feng Wu frowned and rubbed her own chest. Meanwhile, Feng Sun didn't see the change in the other girl's expressions. Scratching his head, he said shyly, "Boss Jun, you know how poor Xiaowu's cultivation level is. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. The other teenage girls all chuckled. Feng Sun said, "And that's not the only thing. She's also very unlucky, and gets into trouble all the time. She almost got killed a few times, so this talisman is perfect for her." Jun Linyuan said, "She almost got killed a few times?" Feng Sun sighed. "That's right. Take the people in this room for example. Zhuo Qingxian is so sure that Xiao Wu killed Zhuo Qingyu and injured the third princess that he wants to kill her for it." Feng Sun gave away Zhuo Qingxian without hesitation. Jun Linyuan narrowed his eyes, and no one could decipher his deep, dark, and cold gaze. The glance from Jun Linyuan gave Zhuo Qingxian the creeps, and a chill ran down his spine. Involuntarily, Sapphiro hid behind Ranmil. Her older brother had been the most adamant in trying to kill Feng Wu. He had sent spiritual lord assassins one after another for that purpose. Jun Linyuan was simply so terrifying. If he really wanted to take revenge for Feng Wu, at that thought, Sapphiro cringed and didn't dare to make a sound. "So Boss Jun, can I give it to dummy little Wu?" "Dummy little Wu?" The corner of Feng Wu's mouth twitched. Where did that name come from? She decided that after she found the seed of the spirit source and her abilities improved, she would call Feng Sun Little Dumb Sun. Boss Jun, can I?" Feng Sun asked in a pleading voice. The Crown Prince said proudly, "Yes." Elated, Feng Sun chuckled. "Xiao Wu will be so happy when she knows what I'm going to give her." The Crown Prince threw a murderous look at him. "No, it's from you, Boss Jun," Feng Sun mumbled, secretly complaining about how stingy Jun Linyuan was. "Boss Jun, where are you going?" Seeing that Jun Linyuan had turned to leave, Feng Sun called after him. Jun Linyuan stopped abruptly. Feng Sun had thought that Boss Jun was going to answer him, but Jun Linyuan turned his cold gaze on Zhuo Qingxian. Zhuo Qingxian felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. But Jun Linyuan left without another word. Jun Linyuan's aura was too imposing. When he was present, even if he didn't say anything, his aura seemed to fill the entire space. The moment he was gone, Dugu Mengshi fell to the ground. Phew! He wiped the sweat off his forehead. His Royal Highness is simply too scary. Everyone was intimidated by his relentlessness and resolve. Hey, do you still want to do it? Do you? Feng Sun was the only one who was still serious about the game. The others all felt exhausted. Have you all given up? All right. I'll do it. Feng Sun grinned and injected his spiritual essence. Soon. Chapter 1849 Face Slapping. Chapter 1849 Face Slapping. The dice were rolled. Number 24. Ranmil stared at lattice number 24 and was almost sure that Feng Sun wouldn't find anything good, because she had stolen all his good luck just then. But when Feng Sun opened the lattice, Ranmil was filled with despair. The turtle diagram. Feng Sun happily picked it up. Holding the diagram, he told Xianyi, Ha. I thought I ran out of luck already, but as it turns out, I still can find good stuff. The goddess of luck must love me. Xianyi found it quite strange as well, but he was always poker-faced and didn't show much concern at all. Ranmil was the one who was truly confused. She stared at Feng Sun. This shouldn't be happening. She had already drawn Feng Sun's good luck away. But now Feng Sun was the only one who dared to roll the dice. He said, Are you all giving up? If that's the case, I'll keep going. I'll give it a try. Ranmil smiled and nodded at Feng Sun. I'd like to try my luck. Feng Sun looked at Ranmil and said in bewilderment, The legend is that you're the luckiest girl on the grassland. But from what I've seen today, that's not exactly true. Ranmil stiffened a little. But she soon returned to herself and smiled at Feng Sun. Young Lord Feng, you're so humorous. I'm not like that. It's just a rumor. No, it's not. You really are very lucky. No one on the grassland can compare with you. I'm sure your luck has turned around by now, said Feng Sun. Ranmil thought to herself, Of course it has. I've transferred all my bad luck to you. She then smiled at Feng Sun. Young Lord Feng, would you like to make a bet? As someone who always looked for fun, Feng Sun was intrigued. What bet? Ranmil said, If I can find a 5-star treasure this time, young Lord Feng, May I have the turtle diagram? Feng Sun raised an eyebrow. If you can find a 5-star, no, a 4-star treasure, I'll give you the turtle diagram. Ranmil wanted it because she was the only one who knew that a map was hidden in the diagram. Silly boy, the white fairy said grumpily. I've put a map inside that diagram. Feng Wu asked curiously, what map? The white fairy said casually, the map of this place. I even highlighted where all the treasures can be found, their levels, and how difficult it will be to obtain them. Feng Wu stared at the white fairy. The fairy said, it took me an entire afternoon. It was a tough job. Feng Wu said, if Ranmil gets her hand on it. The white fairy glanced at Feng Wu. Do you want to know the truth? Feng Wu said, do tell. The white fairy said, if you don't interfere with Ranmil's skills, she can take away most of the treasures here. Feng Wu nodded. So we can't allow her to get the turtle diagram. Ranmil smiled at Feng Sun and nodded. It's a deal then. Feng Sun beamed at her. No problem. Feng Wu wanted to smack him on the head. However, at that moment. Chapter 1850, Feng Wu's Super Patron 1. Chapter 1850, Feng Wu's Super Patron 1. Of course Feng Wu wouldn't let Ranmil find anything good. Therefore, after Ranmil rolled the dice and opened the door, she found the lattice completely empty. The sight rendered Ranmil speechless. This shouldn't be happening. She had stolen Feng Sun's good luck and transferred her bad luck to him. Why was she still so unlucky? Feng Sun gave Ranmil a sympathetic look. Well, I don't know what to say. Ranmil put on a sad face. Feng Sun patted her shoulder and tried to comfort her. There. Our bet still counts, all right? With teary eyes, Ranmil looked up at Feng Sun. The innocent look in her eyes made Feng Sun feel quite heroic. Patting his chest, he said confidently, if you win, I'll give you the turtle diagram. If you lose, you just give me a smile. How's that? Ranmil had been about to cry a moment ago, but Feng Sun's words made her chuckle. Feng Sun was pleased to see that he had cheered Ranmil up. What he didn't know was that Feng Wu was rolling her eyes at him on the other side. Feng Sun then rolled up his sleeves and said, just wait and see. He was about to roll the dice when Feng Wu took action. She didn't help him this time. Instead, whoosh, she grabbed the rest of the good stuff in the lattices and stored them away in her ring space. It all happened in the blink of an eye. The white fairy looked at Feng Wu, and so did Little Phoenix. Feng Wu said, let's go. The white fairy said, wait, why are you taking everything? Feng Wu smirked. Why else? Leave them here, so that young Lord Feng can fawn on the girl? The white fairy said, why do you sound so resentful? Of course Feng Wu was resentful. She was so nice to Feng Sun, but that boy was trying to please Ranmil with the turtle diagram. He's just a fool. Let's go. Feng Wu turned to leave. The white fairy and Little Phoenix looked at each other, and both shrugged. However, the white fairy's eyes lit up when she looked at Little Phoenix. You. Golden light suddenly flickered in Little Phoenix's black eyes. It was dazzling, intimidating, and as sharp as a blade. Even someone like the white fairy felt her heart skip a beat, and she felt intimidated, as if she was facing someone much more superior. Feng Wu was walking in the front and missed the sight, but the white fairy saw it all. You're... The golden light frightened the white fairy. After absorbing all the spiritual essence, Little Phoenix had made another breakthrough and regained some of its lost memories. It remembered what it used to be called. That golden light used to belong to Boss Phoenix. Shut up. The bird shot a severe glance at the white fairy, and she was reminded of a familiar stately figure. The white fairy looked down and hid the look on her face, but deep down, she was in turmoil. Chapter 1851, Feng Wu's Super Patron 2. Chapter 1851, Feng Wu's Super Patron 2. Little Phoenix really was the one who was known as Boss Phoenix. The white fairy remembered that Chu Tianxiao used to have an invincible master, and that mysterious master, who used to rule the continent, had a proud phoenix. She found the bird quite pretty back then, but when she said something that offended it, Boss Phoenix punished her by making her reflect upon her faults by the Black Pond in Phoenix Mountain for 3 years. She lived those 3 years in hell, and wanted to kill herself all the time. Hence, she had always been deeply frightened of Boss Phoenix. Back then, Chu Tianxiao wouldn't help her either. He even told her that Boss Phoenix represented his master, and offending the bird was the same as offending his master. Chu Tianxiao admired his master blindly. Chu Tianxiao had some rules. Everything his master said was correct. If his master told him to do something, he would rather die than see it unfinished. He would never ask any questions, and he firmly believed in his master. And that war. The memory made the White Fairy's head ache terribly. She couldn't bring herself to think of that slaughter. It was so miserable. Right now, Boss Phoenix, whom she thought was dead, was following Feng Wu around. What did that mean? You! The White Fairy felt her knees buckle. Little Phoenix threw a dirty look at her. Say nothing, and just be yourself. The White Fairy looked intimidated. She nodded, but vented her sarcasm in her head. She now knew who the bird really was, so how was she supposed to be herself? Around the bird, she was just a little girl. She wanted to ask what happened to the stunning white-robed figure. Although she had continually stressed how amazing Chu Tianxiao was, compared with that man, Chu Tianxiao was a mere servant. Feng Wu sensed the change in mood as she walked, and she suddenly turned her head. The White Fairy jumped when their eyes met. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. Dear Fairy, what's wrong? You don't look too well. No, I'm fine. What can possibly be wrong? Haha. The White Fairy waved her hand. Feng Wu sounded concerned when she said, Did you spend too much energy to help me, and injured yourself? Please let me give you some spiritual essence. The White Fairy would have said yes in any other situation. Because Feng Wu's spiritual essence was very pure and dense, it would help the White Fairy greatly. But now, the White Fairy stole a glance at the bird. The bird smirked. The White Fairy's stomach lurched, and she waved at Feng Wu. No, there's no need. Please don't bother. Feng Wu gave the White Fairy a suspicious look. What happened to you? She felt like a different person. The White Fairy said, No one here is capable enough to defeat me, so what can possibly go wrong? By the way, don't you still want your fallen star sword? Gosh, Feng Wu suddenly remembered. When she first entered this place, the White Fairy had put her fallen star sword somewhere, so that it could absorb spiritual essence. Then with what happened with Qiuling and the lucky draw, she almost forgot about her sword. But won't it be too much trouble if we double back now? Asked Feng Wu. Chapter 1852. Feng Wu's Super Patron 3. Chapter 1852. Feng Wu's Super Patron 3. The White Fairy wasn't exactly famous for her good temper. She was proud and aloof, and Feng Wu often had to beg or coax her for help. But the fairy was being awfully nice now. No, of course it's no bother. If you like, I'll take you there through a shortcut. Feng Wu looked at her in amazement. This didn't feel right. This White Fairy felt like a different person, as if she was possessed by something. No matter how hard Feng Wu pressed her, however, the White Fairy wouldn't give her an explanation. Because just like Boss Phoenix said, it wasn't time yet. Little Phoenix shot an arrogant glance at the White Fairy and thought, This girl only knows that I'm with Feng Wu now. But if she knows who Feng Wu used to be, she'll lose her mind. Of course, Little Phoenix would never reveal such a big secret. The White Fairy remained exceedingly enthusiastic on their way back. This way, please. There's a shortcut that can take us there in no time. Miss Feng Wu, please look at the frescoes on the wall. They'll show up randomly every once in a while. Please don't underestimate the frescoes. If you can learn the knowledge hidden in them, you'll find it very useful later, when you have to fight against the super puppet soldiers. Feng Wu couldn't help but glance at the White Fairy. Even the dullest person could see that the White Fairy was trying to fawn on her. That didn't make sense. The fairy used to be the princess of an ancient dynasty, and she was once one of the top cultivators on the continent. Why did she need to ingratiate herself with Feng Wu? Did you betray me in some way? Feng Wu eyed the White Fairy suspiciously, feeling uneasy. Nonsense, the White Fairy said grumpily. I want you to find the seed of the spirit source, okay? Fengwu asked why. The white fairy said, because I'm the one teaching you. That way, I'll be able to show off to the other two guys. Ha ha ha. Fengwu asked, is that it? The white fairy said, and it's also because of Chu Tianxiao. Who else am I supposed to help? Speaking of which, do you want to learn the Guardian of the Earth skill or not? It's a group attack technique. Fengwu's eyes lit up. She had only learned individual attack skills, and had mostly engaged in one-on-one battles. If she could learn this one, even if she was surrounded in the future, she could attack her enemies all at once and escape. Fengwu nodded solemnly. Yes, I want to learn it. With a wave of the white fairy's hand, the flickering frescoes were suddenly fixed on the wall. Without hesitation, Fengwu sat down cross-legged and studied the Guardian of the Earth. Behind her, the white fairy glanced at Boss Phoenix, as if looking for approval. Little Phoenix nodded in an arrogant manner. The recognition made the white fairy want to jump around in excitement. Looking at Fengwu, who had little idea of what was going on, the white fairy was amazed by how lucky the girl was. She had only casually mentioned the Guardian of the Earth to Fengwu just then, but was it just another common skill? If one had to compare, it was more valuable than all the treasures in the treasure hall put together. Chapter 1853 Untitled. Chapter 1853, Untitled. The frescoes flickered in and out of view. So why did they appear now? Because the white fairy controlled them, so that Fengwu could learn the skill. Seeing that Boss Phoenix was pleased, the white fairy was over the moon. But she was a little worried. The Guardian of the Earth wasn't exactly easy to understand, especially the Sanskrit part, which no normal person could read. But Fengwu read the words aloud when she got to that part. The earth cracks open, and the sky falls. She went on smoothly. Does she actually understand the ancient language? The white fairy was shocked. She herself could only understand half of it. Little Phoenix glanced at the white fairy and said grumpily, of course she does. You have no idea how much stuff she has learned since she was little. The white fairy sighed in amazement. With you around, I'm sure Miss Fengwu can master anything. She's such a lucky girl. Little Phoenix glanced at the white fairy and thought, I wasn't the one who taught Xiao Wu. If this fairy knows Xiao Wu was taught by my master himself, she would faint. However, that would expose its master as well. Therefore, Little Phoenix raised its chin, neither admitting nor denying the claim. The white fairy thought that she had guessed correctly and envied Fengwu greatly. Fengwu closed her eyes. Suddenly, golden light shone from inside her body, and dots of golden light danced around her like little elves. Pointing somewhere ahead of her, Fengwu suddenly shouted, the ground opens. About 10 meters away, a round hole about 10 square meters in size appeared on the ground. Everything within the circle crumbled. The white fairy cried out, she's mastered the first stance already. She was so surprised because the Guardian of the Earth was a technique that required the earth attribute. Gaping ground, the first stance, was a powerful AoE skill that had taken her 3 years to learn. Little Phoenix glanced at the white fairy proudly. Of course Xiao Wu had learned it quickly. She was Fengwu. The white fairy said, the first stance is relatively easy, but the second one, cracking ground, is very difficult. One can't possibly master it without 3 or 5 years of practice. So we have to wait until this place opens next time. However, before she could finish, rumble, there was a loud noise. The white fairy looked in the direction of the noise. One look and her eyes popped. That was because the ground cracked. Seriously, Fengwu has already mastered the second stance. How's that possible? The white fairy had always been very calm. After all these years, she herself had only mastered up to the third stance. However, it took Fengwu next to no time to master the second stance. Did she learn this before? The white fairy looked at Little Phoenix in astonishment. Crossing its wings, the bird said proudly, wouldn't you have noticed if she had? The white fairy agreed, because there was something that only those who had practiced the Guardian of the Earth knew, which was that once one learned the essence of the Guardian of the Earth, they would be shrouded in a golden glow. Even their hair and eyes would turn a golden brown shade. Chapter 1854 Untitled. Chapter 1854, Untitled. Once a person mastered the circulation of the spiritual essence of the guardian of the earth, they could control how they looked. I didn't expect her to be able to master 2 stances in a row. That's very impressive, and I'm amazed. But at the end of the day, it's all because of your great taste. As it turned out, the white fairy knew how to fawn on people, which was what she was doing to the bird. Little Phoenix said proudly, "You still haven't seen the best of her." Huh. The white fairy wondered what more potential the girl could have. Right at that moment, whoosh, there was a loud noise. That sound and the surge of spiritual essence astonished the white fairy. She stared at Feng Wu so hard that her eyes popped. That was because ground control. She's mastered the 3rd stance. The white fairy stared at Feng Wu in disbelief and didn't know what else to say. She pointed at Feng Wu. The white fairy used to be a top cultivator on the continent. Although she wasn't Chu Tianxiao, she wasn't much weaker either. After all the things she had experienced, she wasn't easily excited anymore. But now she couldn't hold back her excitement. This only meant one thing. And that was, Feng Wu was simply too impressive. It's only been a few hours, and she's mastered the 3rd stance. The white fairy had to take a few deep breaths to calm herself down. Because it had taken the white fairy as long as 10 years to master the 3rd stance. And she was considered to be a very talented pupil. Little Phoenix gave the white fairy a proud look. Of course she's amazing. Have you forgotten whose pupil she is? Seeing the look on the bird's face, the white fairy snorted inwardly. Right, complimenting your pupil and yourself all at once. In fact, she had guessed wrong. The bird wasn't Feng Wu's master. Her real master was the bird's master, who was an utterly unreachable figure. You did well. Little Phoenix glanced at the white fairy. Elated, the fairy beamed at the bird. Unable to control her excitement, the white fairy went on saying, "The 3rd stance is a control skill. All enemies within its range will be rendered immobile for 0.1 second. Since a capable cultivator like the white fairy was showing Little Phoenix so much respect, one could only imagine how terrifying Mu Jiuzhou himself was, since he used to rule the continent. Little Phoenix nodded and said, "There are still 7 more stances." The white fairy said, "But they're not here." "Where are they?" Little Phoenix frowned. The white fairy said, "The clues to their whereabouts are here, but the other 2 ghost kings also control this place." Little Phoenix frowned. It used to be the superior immortal phoenix, but now, it was still way too weak. There was no way it could handle 2 ghost kings. Just then Feng Wu opened her eyes. Her eyes had always been pretty, but now, they were so clear and bright that one couldn't find the right word to describe them. Chapter 1855 Untitled. Chapter 1855 Untitled. Finally the 3rd stance, said Feng Wu as she stretched. I have a feeling that the 3rd one will be very useful. Too bad that there are only 3 of them. Otherwise, the white fairy stared at Feng Wu with a strange look in her eyes. Feng Wu stopped stretching halfway. She looked perplexed. Dear fairy, why are you staring at me like that? What did I say wrong? The white fairy took a deep breath and looked away. She didn't want to talk at that moment. Feng Wu asked, What's going on? Sister fairy, you've been acting oddly for a while. The white fairy stared at Feng Wu. No, you're the odd one. Feng Wu looked innocent and confused. The white fairy stared at Feng Wu. Do you know how annoying you are? You've mastered 3 stances in a row. I'm so mad. Feng Wu looked even more innocent. What did I do? The white fairy said. You're so annoying. Do you know how I learned my guardian of the earth? Do you know how long it took me to master the 3rd stance? 10 years. It took me as long as 10 years to finally be able to do it. And you took 6 hours. Feng Wu, are you even human? This is insane. As the white fairy pressed forward, Feng Wu fell back. In the end, she stood there with her back pressed against the wall. The white fairy was so angry that her eyes went red. Feng Wu said, Well, what else could she say? If she were in the White Fairy's position, she would be wildly jealous as well. Tell me, how did you do it? The White Fairy pressed. Fengwu said, I don't know. I just understood all the words in the Guardian of the Earth and knew all the moves. Even what? Asked the White Fairy. Fengwu said, I even felt like I was the one who created the Guardian of the Earth. Ha 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 ha. The White Fairy was angry at first, but she laughed when she heard those words. Pressing a hand to her stomach and supporting herself with her other hand on the wall, she laughed so hard that she was in tears. At the same time, what she didn't notice was the look little Phoenix gave her. There was a mysterious and indescribable look in its eyes. Nor did Fengwu notice it. She seemed to realize that she had said something unreasonable, and she scratched her head and said, Well, I'm just making things up. Please don't laugh at me like that. I feel so embarrassed. The White Fairy pointed at Fengwu and kept laughing. Fengwu didn't know what to say. Just then footsteps came from outside. With her sharp ears, Fengwu immediately realized who they belonged to. They were Feng Sun, Xianyi, Ranmil, Master Ju, and Sapphiro. Why were the five of them together? Fengwu was still frowning when she heard Feng Sun's voice. Princess, Feng Sun grinned. I told you, didn't I? I said I would give you the turtle diagram, and I have. I always keep my word. Chapter 1856. Are you fond of Junlin Yuan? 1. Chapter 1856. Are you fond of Junlin Yuan? 1. Fengwu frowned when she heard Feng Sun's voice. Well, I see that the boy gave the turtle diagram to the girl. The White Fairy smiled. Finally she got what she wanted. How very rewarding for her. Fengwu's face darkened. As if Fengwu wasn't annoyed enough, the White Fairy added. And she's your rival in love. No, she's not. Fengwu denied it. I have nothing to do with Junlin Yuan. Well, do I hear jealousy? Is that what I hear? How interesting. Fengwu didn't know what she could say to talk her way out of this. But she really was very angry at Feng Sun. Before she left the room, she had put things in perfect order, so that he would win and Ranmil would lose the bet. He shouldn't have lost the turtle diagram to Ranmil, but then Fengwu clenched her fists in frustration. Just then, she heard them talking again. Judging by the voices, Ranmil and Feng Sun were walking side by side, and her soft, pleasant voice reminded Fengwu of a chirping bird. Feng Sun couldn't help but compliment her voice. My princess, you sound a lot like another person. Ranmil asked curiously, who? Little Fengwu, my sister. Feng Sun glanced at Ranmil and went on. The two of you are equally innocent and kind. It's only that you're quieter, and she's more active and talkative. Ranmil's eyes flashed imperceptibly when Feng Sun mentioned Fengwu's name. However, it was too subtle for Feng Sun to notice. But that meaningful look didn't escape Fengwu. Ranmil feigned an indifferent tone and said, I heard from the maids that Miss Fengwu and His Royal Highness are. Feng Sun loved this topic. He had been trying to talk to someone about it. Since Ranmil asked, he was happy to elaborate. Well, you've asked the right person. No one knows better than I do. Ranmil raised her eyebrows a little, and her clear, bright eyes looked very innocent. You? Feng Sun said. Of course. So what have you heard? Ranmil pretended to hesitate, before she said. People are saying that His Royal Highness only sees Miss Fengwu as a bed-warming maid. I only heard it from other people, and I scolded them for spreading such a rumor. Feng Sun chuckled. So that's what people are saying. Well, I knew it. One day, Boss Jun's pride will get little Fengwu in trouble. What? Ranmil suddenly had a very bad feeling, and her face stiffened. But she soon recovered and was that curious, innocent girl again. So what they're saying isn't true then? Asked Ranmil. Crossing his hands behind his back, Feng Sun said proudly. Of course not. The truth is exactly the opposite. Ranmil didn't know what to say. The others turned to look at Feng Sun as well. Even Master Ju was curious. It wasn't common for a capable man like him to be interested in other people's affairs. But because the famous Junlin Yuan was involved, even Master Ju was intrigued. Chapter 1857. Are you fond of Jun Lin Yuan? 2. Chapter 1857. Are you fond of Jun Lin Yuan? 2. Feng Sun loved the attention and felt immensely satisfied. After making everyone wait for a long while, he said in a smug tone, "Well, Boss Jun might seem very bossy and arrogant around Feng Wu, but that's not how he actually feels about her. In fact." Everyone stared at him. Feng Sun said, "In fact, Boss Jun really likes little Feng Wu." Rammel's face immediately stiffened. Feng Sun didn't notice, and he went on talking. But His Royal Highness is too proud to admit his affection for Feng Wu, because he'll feel humiliated. Therefore, when there are other people around, he's always very impatient with Xiao Wu. Ranmil clenched her fists in her long sleeves, and her nails dug into her palms. She bit her lower lip so hard that she could taste blood. Bullshit. Feng Wu stared at Feng Sun as she cried out inwardly. What did he mean by saying that Jun Linyuan liked her a lot? And since when was Jun Linyuan only impatient with her when other people were around? That arrogant teenager was just as impatient with her when they were alone. The white fairy glanced at Feng Wu and seemed intrigued. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Don't overthink it. It's not like what Feng Sun is saying. The white fairy only smiled at her. Feng Wu was speechless. The figures on the wall were still demonstrating the guardian of the earth, and she was still wrapping up the third stance she had just learned. Therefore, she couldn't just stand up and leave yet. What intrigued her was that since she was only in an ordinary room now, why didn't Feng Sun and the others come in? She then asked the question. The white fairy gave her a strange look. Feng Wu asked, "Did I say something wrong?" The white fairy said, "Do you really think that everyone can simply walk into this room? And did you think you just stumbled upon the guardian of the earth because you were lucky?" Feng Wu was really curious now. Having learned the stances, she knew very well how destructive the guardian of the earth could be and how rare a technique it was. However, it wasn't all that difficult to find at all. I walked past it, so I just sat down and practiced it. Wasn't that what happened? Wasn't it luck? The white fairy looked from Feng Wu to the bird. If she hadn't been trying to fawn on Boss Phoenix, she would never have given away something like the guardian of the earth. No, Feng Wu didn't just walk past it and sit down to practice it. What was she thinking? But the white fairy couldn't say those things, because the bird wasn't ready to reveal its identity yet. Yes, it's because you're lucky. No one is as lucky as you. The white fairy sighed with resignation. She then looked Feng Wu in the eye and said, "Because you're lucky, you randomly stumbled upon a hidden dungeon in this place and entered it without breaking a sweat. And you easily gained the recognition of the guardian of the earth and..." Feng Wu realized what was going on from her tone. So this was a hidden dungeon that the others couldn't see. That was why Feng Sun and the others have been walking around this place without ever setting foot in here. Meanwhile, Feng Sun and the others were still chatting. Ranmil looked at Feng Sun and asked, "So, does His Royal Highness really like Feng Wu very much?" Chapter 1858. The Secret Behind It, 1. Chapter 1858. The Secret Behind It, 1. After some thought she said, "It makes sense because Feng Wu is so beautiful." Feng Sun said, "That's right. Don't let other people mislead you into thinking that Boss Jun doesn't like Feng Wu. You really shouldn't assume." "Wait, Your Highness, you're not interested in Boss Jun, are you?" The white fairy guffawed when she saw the frozen smile on Rammel's face. "Gosh, this is so funny. That boy is so adorable. Ha 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 ha." Feng Wu rubbed her forehead in resignation. Ranmil had to take a deep breath to control herself. "Of course not. How can I possibly think of His Royal Highness in that way? Young Lord Feng, please don't make fun of me, haha." Her smile was so miserable that she might as well be crying. The white fairy said, "She should have just admitted it. All the denying only makes her a hypocrite. I don't like her at all." Feng Sun said happily, "Wow, I see you really aren't in love with Boss Jun, ha ha ha. Good, good. I see that not every girl is infatuated with him. I'm so happy." He then patted Rammel's shoulder in an approving manner. "That quality alone makes you my best buddy. From now on, if you need any help, just tell me." Ranmil now really felt like crying, and she immediately changed the subject. Have you found the door to the hidden dungeon? That immediately distracted Feng Sun, and he shook his head in resignation. So this is the hidden dungeon. It's so hard to find a way in. Ranmil closed her eyes and tried to remember what her master said before. Red March, her master, was highly revered by people on this continent, but she was such a mysterious figure that she would disappear for years on end. Ranmil still remembered how serious Red March was before she left the last time. She told Ranmil that she had to find the Guardian of the Earth in the secret dungeon. Moreover, Red March had also left Ranmil with some notes on the Guardian of the Earth. Red March had been searching for the Guardian of the Earth for years without any success, which only proved how formidable the technique was. Ranmil remembered something Red March once said. If one could find all the pieces of the Guardian of the Earth, the complete set would almost be as precious as the seed of the spirit source. That was why Ranmil wasn't jealous when Feng Sun found the Purple Sun swordplay and Blowing Snow swordplay. Compared with the Guardian of the Earth, those two manuals were nothing. Ranmil closed her eyes and searched her memory. Her eyes then lit up. Found it. All eyes were on Ranmil. Ranmil walked to one of the walls and tapped it with her fingers. After 9 taps, there was a creaking sound. The wall slid open, revealing a small door that was wide enough for one person to walk through. Everyone else now stared at Ranmil in amazement and showered her with compliments. Ranmil still looked as innocent as ever. She waved her hands repeatedly, telling the others that she hadn't done anything. But when they weren't looking, Ranmil grinned maliciously. Chapter 1859 The Secret Behind It Too. Chapter 1859 The Secret Behind It Too. Why would Ranmil bring Feng Sun and the others here at the risk of losing the Guardian of the Earth? Because according to Red March's notes, to enter the hidden dungeon, she would have to pass 9 trials, all of which were riddled with danger. She had brought all the others here as human shields, but she let them think that they were all working together in searching for the treasure. Are they going to go through trials? Perplexed, Feng Wu looked up at the White Fairy. The White Fairy nodded. Of course. Feng Wu said. But I entered this place just like that. The White Fairy said matter-of-factly. If I can bring you here, why should you go through the trials? It would be a waste of time, right? Feng Wu agreed, but wouldn't that be too strange? People would think that I got special treatment, said Feng Wu. The White Fairy rolled her eyes, glanced at Little Phoenix and mumbled, You've always been lucky and always had special treatment, okay? Her voice was so low that Feng Wu didn't hear her clearly. What? She asked curiously. The White Fairy rolled her eyes at Feng Wu. I don't want to talk to you. I'm sure you're blessed by the goddess of good luck. Feng Wu cleared her throat. Let's search this room. The clue to the second chapter of The Guardian of the Earth is here. We'll leave after we find it, the White Fairy reminded Feng Wu. I see. Feng Wu knew that she had only just learned the first chapter, and that the second chapter was somewhere among the tombs. As for exactly where it was, the clue was right here in front of her. That Ranmil is determined to find the Guardian of the Earth. I think it was on her master's order, the White Fairy said. Really? Feng Wu asked curiously. The White Fairy nodded. The Guardian of the Earth is the most powerful existing Earth attribute technique, especially from the 3rd stance onward. Red March herself is an Earth attribute master. If we let her find it, her cultivation level will rise again. Didn't you say earlier that Red March is one of the most powerful cultivators on this continent? Asked Feng Wu. Back in my day, Red March was already in the top 100. After all these years, most of the top cultivators have aged, suffer from injuries, or have faded away. If she's still around, she'll be much higher on the list now. I think she's at least in the top 20 now, said the White Fairy. That's already very impressive. Feng Wu was amazed. One had to realize that the Zhenhua Empire and the Sinal Grassland weren't the only kingdoms on this continent. The White Fairy then said, Even Red March, a famous cultivator, is determined to find the Guardian of the Earth. Do you realize how precious it is? Feng Wu cleared her throat. Yes, of course it's precious. Earlier, Because of how easily she had obtained it, Feng Wu hadn't thought much of the technique. Now that the white fairy put it that way, Feng Wu finally realized how rare it was. The white fairy said proudly, "If you give the manual to the emperor of your empire, he'll make you a knight or something at least. And it won't be just an empty title. It'll come with dozens of cities." "With this manual alone?" The white fairy said proudly. "Yes, with the first chapter alone." Feng Wu's eyes lit up. She hadn't seen the importance of the Guardian of the Earth when the white fairy told her that Red March wanted it, when its value was compared with titles and cities of the Junwu Empire. However, Feng Wu finally understood its importance. Chapter 1860, The Secret Behind It 3. Chapter 1860, The Secret Behind It 3. "My dear fairy." Feng Wu was very touched. The look in her eyes made the white fairy uneasy, and she said, "Let's look for the clue quickly." "All right." Feng Wu nodded. She decided that if she ever had the chance to meet Chu Tianxiao, her senior brother, she would say some very nice things about the dear fairy. Yes, she clenched her fists. She then looked around, searching for anything that would lead her to the second chapter. They were right in the middle of a stone arch bridge made from white jade. A pair of stone lions sat on either end of the bridge. They were all very lifelike sculptures down to every single hair. Under the bridge flowed a bottomless river. Green lotus leaves covered the water, and the sound was quite pleasant. Where was the clue to the second chapter of The Guardian of the Earth? Before Feng Wu could even start searching, "It's under the 7th lotus leaf opposite the 3rd brick on the right end of the bridge," someone said in a proud voice. Feng Wu looked perplexed. She looked up at Little Phoenix. "Go get it." Crossing its wings, Little Phoenix raised its head. "Really?" Feng Wu sounded suspicious. The white fairy looked from the bird to Feng Wu before looking away. What universe did this girl save in her last life? With the great bird with her, she would be able to do anything. The fairy couldn't understand the bird. It was so merciless toward other people, but it would give the girl whatever she wanted. On their way here, the bird had complained, saying that this place was great, but it just took so long to find the Guardian of the Earth. That obvious hint had made the fairy bring little Feng Wu here directly. This was against the rules, and she would be punished if she was found out. "Is that true?" Feng Wu glanced at Little Phoenix. "How did you find it so quickly? I didn't have a clue at all." The white fairy pushed her a little. "Quickly, Moss." Little Phoenix cast a stern look at the white fairy. "Ahem." The white fairy coughed to cover her slip of the tongue. "Didn't Little Phoenix tell you already? It's under the 7th lotus leaf opposite the 3rd brick on the right end of the bridge." Feng Wu smiled at the white fairy. "What does that lousy bird know? I'm sure it's all made up." "That lousy bird?" She called Master Phoenix a lousy bird. She. The white fairy's eyes widened, and she stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Feng Wu was confused. "What?" The white fairy looked at the bird, whom she deemed to be a supreme figure. Why didn't the defiant Master Phoenix get angry when it was called a lousy bird? Little Phoenix glanced at Feng Wu without saying another word. How could it be angry? This girl was the dearest to its master. Seeing that the white fairy only stood there and looked stunned, the embarrassed Little Phoenix lashed out at the white fairy. "What are you waiting for? Look under that leaf." There was something very authoritative in its tone. Feng Wu nearly jumped. Seeing the white fairy just standing there, Feng Wu thought that the bird had offended her, so she apologized to the fairy. "Dear fairy, please don't be mad. The lousy bird is grumpy for some unknown reason. It didn't mean to yell at you. Please don't kill it for my sake." Chapter 1861, Terrifying Feng Wu 1. Chapter 1861, Terrifying Feng Wu 1. The white fairy shifted her gaze back to Feng Wu. There was something very complicated in her eyes. Kill Master Phoenix? Was that supposed to be a joke? How could she possibly kill the extraordinary bird? Seeing the way the white fairy exhaled, Feng Wu thought that she had appeased the fairy, so she picked Little Phoenix up. The white fairy's pupils contracted. That was the most respected Master Phoenix, and Feng Wu just picked it up by the back of its neck, as if it was just some common spiritual pet. Surely, Master Phoenix would kill Feng Wu on the spot. But to the White Fairy's surprise, Master Phoenix, who was so fierce toward her, just let Feng Wu pick it up like that. Had this world gone insane? Or was this Master Phoenix a fake one? Do I need to repeat myself? The formidable energy given off by the bird belonged to none other than Master Phoenix itself. It wasn't all that powerful, because even Feng Wu was more capable than the bird now. But the White Fairy didn't feel that way. The White Fairy had been injured by that spiritual essence once, and she could still feel it in her bones. Therefore, she was wholeheartedly terrified by the bird, so much so that she had never thought about testing the bird's current capability. All right, I'm going now. The White Fairy quickly dashed off, jumped into the river, and came back with the lotus leaf. Feng Wu watched this with wide eyes. She couldn't believe her eyes. The White Fairy was so aloof and proud at first. So why was she so approachable all of a sudden? No, it wasn't just that. She was almost obsequious. Stop. Feng Wu patted her own head and stopped her train of thought. Why would someone as capable as the White Fairy fawn on that lousy bird? But the truth was that the White Fairy came back in no time with a lotus leaf in her hands. It looked like a big green umbrella. There you go. She was even much kinder to Feng Wu now. Are you really not mad? Feng Wu asked again, unconvinced. The White Fairy glanced at Feng Wu. Me mad? Do you think so little of me? Feng Wu said, all right. Since the White Fairy had said that, Feng Wu forgot about it and turned to study the lotus leaf. It's a map. Feng Wu recognized the map from the veins on the leaf. According to the map, the second chapter of the Guardian of the Earth is on the third tier of this place, Universe Hall. Let's go then. But before we go, we'll have to fetch my fallen star sword first. Naturally, the White Fairy would do whatever Feng Wu wanted now. When they returned to that place, Feng Wu's eyes sparkled when she saw the resplendent sword. Am I seeing things? It's already become a level 2 weapon. When she left the fallen star sword there earlier, it had only been a level 3 weapon. There were 5 levels in total, with 5 being the lowest and 1 the highest. If a level 1 weapon upgraded again, it would become a level 5 divine weapon. Chapter 1862 Terrifying Feng Wu 2. Chapter 1862 Terrifying Feng Wu 2. Feng Wu clicked her tongue in amazement as she studied the magnificent sword. Is it still a level 2 weapon only? That's too slow. The White Fairy stepped forward and flicked her fingers, and a dot of light shot out of her fingertips. Whoosh! Thump! The room seemed to explode at that moment. At that critical moment, the White Fairy grabbed Feng Wu's arm and dragged her to a safe distance. Whoosh! Looking up, Feng Wu saw the glorious explosion created by spiritual essence, and she thought she was looking at shattering stars. Once everything calmed down, she looked at the sword again. One look and she couldn't stay calm anymore. That was because a level 1 weapon? Feng Wu stared at the sword in disbelief. Am I seeing things? Is it really level 1 now? Dear Fairy, have I gone blind? Feng Wu rubbed her eyes. That was because weapons weren't divided into so many levels, and every advancement was extremely difficult. Feng Wu's fallen star sword could upgrade itself, which was already extremely rare, but now, it had jumped from a level 3 to a level 1 weapon directly. One more advancement, and it would become a divine weapon. A divine weapon. Did something go wrong? This is way too fast. Feng Wu walked up to the fallen star sword and turned to ask the White Fairy. The fairy rolled her eyes at Feng Wu. Stop asking questions and just enjoy the great favor I did you, she thought. Feng Wu gave her a strange look, because she felt that the White Fairy she met at the beginning wouldn't have helped her like this. What made her change so drastically? Well, this is going to be interesting. The White Fairy smiled. Feng Wu was confused. The White Fairy then said, Ranmil really is a tough rival. She's reached the 5th trial already. Are the trials that easy to pass? Feng Wu frowned. The White Fairy smirked. Even Red March couldn't pass them all, so how could Ranmil have passed them so easily? The only explanation is that Red March taught her how to do it. Feng Wu said, so she came prepared. Crossing her hands behind her back, the white fairy nodded with a smile. If she finds out that after all her efforts, not only did you take the Guardian of the Earth, but you've learned the first chapter as well, she'll kill you. Feng Wu shrugged. Well, I'll get to try the power of the Guardian of the Earth on her. The white fairy chuckled. Let's go find the second chapter. With the white fairy next to her, Feng Wu could practically walk with her eyes closed. Whereas for other people, this place was riddled with danger, and they had to think carefully before taking each step. The Fallen Star Sword had been absorbing souls on the first tier, while the Guardian of the Earth was on the third tier. Other people would have found it extremely difficult to get from the first tier to the third, because the layout of the tombs was constantly changing and rotating. Even with a map, one would find it next to impossible to follow the directions. But with the white fairy at her side, Feng Wu didn't even have to use her formation skills. They still took a shortcut to get to the third tier. And to take the shortcut, they had to walk past the hidden dungeon where the Guardian of the Earth had been hidden. Chapter 1863, Terrifying Feng Wu 3. Chapter 1863, Terrifying Feng Wu 3. Not bad. When the white fairy took Feng Wu back to the hidden dungeon, her eyes lit up. They've already reached the 8th trial. Feng Wu raised an eyebrow. Does that mean that they'll be here soon? The white fairy seemed intrigued. Yes. There are only 9 trials in total. To be honest, I'm quite interested in this ram mill now. Feng Wu frowned a little and stared at the white fairy. The white fairy raised an eyebrow. Each trial is more difficult than the previous one. Even if Red March gave her notes, to pass all those trials in such a short period of time is very demanding on one's spiritual energy and intelligence. But she was able to lead all those people to the 8th trial in a few hours. You've got to admire her for that. The white fairy glanced at Feng Wu. She was able to befriend that silly boy Feng Sun and have Master Zhu help her. That's her talent. Feng Wu wasn't convinced. The white fairy then gave Feng Wu a stern, sharp glance. She then stared at Feng Wu and asked, do you know what the most important thing is about cultivation? This was the first time that she had ever looked so serious. Feng Wu said, working hard. Wrong. The white fairy stared at Feng Wu coldly. Try again. Feng Wu pursed her lips. She now knew what the right answer was. The white fairy scolded Feng Wu relentlessly. The most important thing about cultivation is to fortify your mind, but you weren't convinced just then. No, it's worse than that. You were jealous. Feng Wu looked up at the fairy and tried to retort, but she could only lower her head. She had to admit that the white fairy was right. She wouldn't recognize Rammel's capability only because she was confident that if she were to take the trials, she would be as fast as Ran Mill. Admitting that other people are talented is a difficult thing to do, but only after you can live with that fact will you be able to reach the spiritual lord stage. Otherwise, even if you find the seed of the spirit source, you'll only be a spiritual lord in name. The white fairy was genuinely angry now. Are all spiritual lords free of jealousy and resentment? Asked Feng Wu. The white fairy smirked. Good question, but you're not like them. Feng Wu asked, why? The white fairy said, because they only want to become one of the best cultivators on this continent, but you want to stand at the very top. Without a steadfast and open mind, you'll be trapped by your inner demon. If that's the kind of person you are, then forget about the Guardian of the Earth, or the seed of the spirit source, because they'll only get you killed. Get out. Now. After that, the white fairy stormed off. Being as short-tempered as she was, she couldn't care about her master Phoenix at this moment, because that was the way she was when she was angry. She left the room promptly, leaving the crestfallen Feng Wu behind. Little Phoenix wanted to say something, but hesitated. It had a bad feeling. Meanwhile, Feng Wu slid down to the ground with her back against a wall. She buried her head in her hands and felt very confused. She acknowledged what the white fairy said, because she really didn't like hearing the fairy praise Ran Mill. She was convinced that with certain conditions in place, she probably wouldn't be any slower than the princess. Chapter 1864, Terrifying Feng Wu 4. Chapter 1864, Terrifying Feng Wu 4. Jealous. Feng Wu shook her head. How could she possibly feel jealous of Ranmil? What did she have to feel jealous about? Somehow, Jun Linyuan's face popped into Feng Wu's head. She likes Jun Linyuan. She may not seem to care about Jun Linyuan, but she's been constantly showing her perfect side. She's advancing when she pretends to fall back. She's doing so subtly. She's like a lurking snake. Given the chance, she'll catch her prey and never let go. That's especially true with Jun Linyuan. She'll be a very terrifying enemy. Feng Wu recalled the White Fairy's words. Could it be that she was jealous of Ranmil because the latter liked Jun Linyuan? No. Impossible. Feng Wu smacked her own head. She would never admit that she had feelings for him. What about admitting that Ranmil was very talented? Feng Wu then recalled the way Feng Sun, Xian Yi, and Master Ju had been helping Ranmil. She had to admit that Ranmil was amazing in that aspect. That's all bullshit. I'm going to tell her off. Little Phoenix flapped its wings angrily when it saw how depressed Feng Wu looked. Feng Wu picked it up with one hand and gently jabbed a finger in its forehead. You really are dauntless, aren't you? Feng Wu said in resignation. Don't you see what's going on here? You're only a spiritual elder spiritual pet, whereas the fairy used to be the top cultivator on the continent. She can kill you with one finger easily. Little Phoenix stared at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Holding the bird, Feng Wu heaved a sigh. Behave yourself from now on, okay? You know how irritable the fairy is. You're still alive because she can't be bothered to deal with you yet. But do you think she's a big-hearted person? If you really get on her nerves, she can get rid of you in a split second. Little Phoenix gave Feng Wu a you idiot look and sighed inwardly. She had no idea who it really was. But the fairy was correct about one thing. Ranmil really is much better than me at befriending other people. So far, she still hasn't had to fight herself, so no one knows what she's capable of. Feng Wu was alarmed. The chairman was right. We should despise the enemy strategically and attach importance to the enemy tactically. Feng Wu clenched her fists. The white fairy appeared out of nowhere and stared at Feng Wu. What are you talking about? Why don't I understand you? The chairman said it. Which chairman? Feng Wu cleared her throat. Obviously, it was the chairman from her previous life, and of course the white fairy didn't know him. Feng Wu said, in other words, it means that from an overall perspective, we should establish the belief that we will win, and in terms of specific operational deployment, we should be careful not to underestimate the enemy, and think about paralyzing and whittling them down. The white fairy stared at Feng Wu with twinkling eyes. Nice. She patted Feng Wu on the shoulder. You've surpassed yourself in such a short time, and you came up with a solution as well. Feng Wu, you've got a great mind. Chapter 1865, Terrifying Feng Wu 5. Chapter 1865, Terrifying Feng Wu 5. However, all people have emotions, which is something I still haven't figured out myself. How could I ask you, a mere spiritual elder, to remain unaffected? I must have lost my mind. The white fairy patted her own head. To the fairy, that was only a random interlude, but to Feng Wu, it was like a wake-up call that improved her mental state yet again. The Universe Hall. Feng Wu was still a few hundred meters from the hall, when she heard a shriek and someone calling for help. That voice. Feng Wu's stomach lurched, because she recognized that voice. Chaoga. It was Duan Chaoga. Feng Wu paled. Qiuling had told her earlier that because Master Ju had arrived late, he had to pour the fresh blood of 2 virgin girls over the bronze doorknobs in order to enter the tombs. Feng Wu had found Qiuling and pointed her in the direction of some great opportunities. I forgot about Chaoga. Feng Wu smacked her own head in frustration. I was too busy with what I was doing, and I completely overlooked Chaoga. She's 100 meters to the northeast and 10 meters behind those rocks. Seeing how frustrated Feng Wu was, the white fairy helped her out. Feng Wu dashed off before the white fairy finished talking. On the other side of the rocks. Let go of me. Zuqingxian, you animal. Let me go. Duan Chaoga was lying on her stomach with her hands pinned behind her back. A man was on top of her, and he had just torn her clothes off. You slut! After all this time you've been with Master Ju, you can't be a virgin anymore. Zhuo Qingxian smirked. Duan Chaoga was furious. She shouted at Zhuo Qingxian, Master Ju never touched me. Zhuo Qingxian said, he didn't? Great. I'll get to taste a virgin today. Duan Chaoga said, Zhuo Qingxian, I'm going to kill you. Whoosh! With a wave of his hand, Zhuo Qingxian tore Duan Chaoga's robe off, and she was only in her undergarments now. She kept struggling, and Zhuo Qingxian slapped her. Smack! It left clear finger marks on Chaoga's left cheek. Zhuo Qingxian smirked. If you must blame someone, blame your best friend. Xiao Wu. What did you do to Xiao Wu? Duan Chaoga glared at Zhuo Qingxian. Zhuo Qingxian's eyes shone maliciously. Feng Wu killed Qingyu. Do you think I'm going to let her off the hook so easily? What? Duan Chaoga cried out. Zhuo Qingyu is dead? Did Xiao Wu kill Zhuo Qingyu? Zhuo Qingyu must have done something extremely bad. Zhuo Qingxian's face twisted. You can forget it. Once I'm through with you, I'm gonna kill you. I'll take it as an advance payment, before I do the same to Feng Wu later. Don't worry. She'll soon find you in the other world. How do you know it was Xiao Wu? Did you see it with your own eyes? I don't need to see it. She did it. How can you say that? What if it wasn't Xiao Wu? I don't care. Someone has to pay for my sister's death. Zhuo Qingxian, you're completely unreasonable. Zhuo Qingxian smirked. Weaklings don't deserve reason. Duan Chaoga was dumbfounded. Zhuo Qingxian was ready to force himself on Chaoga. Chapter 1866 It Hurts 1. Chapter 1866 It Hurts 1. A sword swiftly charged at Zhuo Qingxian from behind, aiming at a vital spot. Zhuo Qingxian's stomach lurched when he felt the sensation of death wrapping around him. At the critical moment, Zhuo Qingxian moved as fast as he could and shifted to one side. Whoosh! Feng Wu's sword brushed past Zhuo Qingxian's head. Some of his hair fell to the ground, and Zhuo Qingxian looked over his shoulder. Xiao Wu! Chaoga cried out in excitement. Feng Wu! Zhuo Qingxian's eyes shone coldly. The next second he grinned maliciously. Today is my lucky day. I've been looking for you everywhere, and here you are, right in front of me. Zhuo Qingxian stared at Feng Wu and snorted. This is great. Feng Wu kept her face emotionless and pointed the fallen star sword at Zhuo Qingxian. She struck out without another word. Zhuo Qingxian smiled coldly. Feng Wu, you're just a petty spiritual elder. How dare you try to kill me? He struck back at Feng Wu. Terrifying power poured out of his hand. Zhuo Qingxian sneered. What was this spiritual elder thinking? Did she think she was going to be his match? Thump! Their power clashed and exploded in midair. Zhuo Qingxian fell back one step, while Feng Wu fell back several. Thump! Her back smashed into a wall. Zhuo Qingxian's eyes widened in disbelief when he saw this. How was that even possible? In the world of cultivation, there was a common understanding. One level could create such a huge difference that was almost impossible to surpass, let alone a difference in stage. But now, a spiritual lord like him wasn't able to kill a spiritual elder with a single strike. Die! And that spiritual elder weakling was brandishing her sword at him. That sword! Zhuo Qingxian's eyes lit up when he saw the fallen star sword. He suddenly understood. A level 1 weapon? Zhuo Qingxian looked amazed. Feng Wu still kept her face emotionless and didn't say a word. The look in her eyes reminded one of the goddess of death. She was very resolute. It was as if killing Zhuo Qingxian was the only thing she knew. I didn't know you had a level 1 weapon. Zhuo Qingxian stiffened. Because it suddenly occurred to him that Feng Wu used to have a level 5 weapon. How did it become level 1 so suddenly? Your sword has a sword spirit and can upgrade itself. Only this type of sword would be called a spiritual sword. Feng Wu still remained silent and stared at Zhuo Qingxian. She charged at him again. Well, what a precious thing you have. You're only a spiritual elder. You don't deserve such a great weapon. Rather than having you waste it, Why don't I take it from you? Zhuo Qingxian said greedily. Feng Wu had a murderous look in her eyes. Thump. Zhuo Qingxian's palm met Feng Wu's fallen star sword again. How intimidating was this power? Zhuo Qingxian fell back 2 steps, while Feng Wu stumbled back until she smashed into the wall again. Chapter 1867, It Hurts Too. Chapter 1867, It Hurts Too. Wretch. Feng Wu spat out a mouthful of blood. Cough cough. Zhuo Qingxian had hit her in the chest and nearly broke her ribs. Xiao Wu. Frightened, Xiaoga ran up to Feng Wu and supported her. Feng Wu was so overwhelmed by hatred that she had forgotten about Xiaoga. All she wanted to do now was kill Zhuo Qingxian. Zhuo Qingxian gave Feng Wu a mocking look. Kid, I'm too much for you. Pushing Xiaoga away, Feng Wu struggled to her feet. After the 2 strikes, Feng Wu was already severely injured. She could barely stand up. But she never looked away from Zhuo Qingxian. She then wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Die! Holding the fallen star sword, she cried out, the first stance, sword of the other world. Zhuo Qingxian still sneered at those words. Are you seriously trying to fight me? Don't make me laugh. Raising the fallen star sword with both hands, Feng Wu charged at Zhuo Qingxian, regardless of how dangerous it was. Formidable spiritual essence swept over the area. The moment before Feng Wu's sword touched Zhuo Qingxian, he slid away, spun around, and reappeared behind Feng Wu in the next instant. Just as he struck down at Feng Wu, gaping ground, Feng Wu yelled. She had combined sword of the other world with gaping ground, the first stance of the guardian of the earth. While the sword came from above, the ground beneath them also opened. The 2 stances fused together so well, as if they were naturally a pair. That took Zhuo Qingxian by surprise. Whoosh! He stumbled forward, and almost fell onto Feng Wu's sword. But after all, he was a capable cultivator. A spiritual lord wouldn't be defeated so easily. At the critical moment, Zhuo Qingxian pushed off of the ground with the tip of his left foot, and turned at an impossible angle. He then dashed off to a safe distance, avoiding Feng Wu's next strike. Although he got away unharmed, he now stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. This shouldn't be happening. Feng Wu was a level 7 spiritual elder at most, whereas he was a level 3 spiritual lord. She was simply too inferior. Common sense told him that. Feng Wu should only be able to defend herself. She shouldn't even have enough strength to attack. But now, not only had she attacked, she had almost injured him. However, Zhuo Qingxian had only used a third of his power. At that thought, Zhuo Qingxian grinned. Feng Wu, do you really think you can touch me? I've only used a third of my real power. A murderous look filled Feng Wu's eyes. Her injury didn't seem to have any impact on her. Without hesitation, she pointed the sword at Zhuo Qingxian again. The second stance of the fallen star sword, dancing dragon in the moonlight. After she activated the stance, she instinctively used the second stance of the guardian of the earth, cracking ground. Zhuo Qingxian was prepared for her assault this time. When Feng Wu appeared behind him, he grabbed her tiny waist with his right hand. This time, he used 40% of his full power. To Feng Wu, that 40% felt like an iron bar around her. She couldn't even move a finger. Chapter 1868, It Hurts 3. Chapter 1868, It Hurts 3. Although Feng Wu was fierce and wasn't afraid of death, in the face of the man's absolute power, her anger didn't do her any good. Zhuo Qingxian grinned maliciously, picked Feng Wu up, and smashed her head into the wall, as if he was knocking a bell. Thump! Feng Wu felt as if her head had turned into a crushed melon. Xiao Wu! Xiaoga cried out in frustration. She picked up a stick and struck at Zhuo Qingxian. However, Zhuo Qingxian raised his empty hand. Crack! The wooden stick turned to pieces. Xiaoga hesitated for a moment. The next second, she jumped at Zhuo Qingxian. She then bit down on his thigh. Zhuo Qingxian frowned in pain and smacked Duan Xiaoga away. Thump! Poor Xiaoga. She smashed into the wall before falling to the ground and blood poured out of her mouth. She tried to struggle to her feet, but she couldn't even lift a finger. Lying there facing Feng Wu, she gasped for air. Despite her frustration and her concern for Feng Wu, she couldn't even stand up. She could only watch as Zhuo Qingxian held Feng Wu by her waist and knocked her head into the wall. Thump, thump, thump. Chowga felt as if a hammer was pounding on her heart. Filled with despair, she burst into tears. Xiao Wu, Xiao Wu, Xiao Wu. Meanwhile, that had to be painful as hell. Feng Wu felt blood covering her forehead and flowing into her eyes. Tears rolled down her cheeks. It hurt. She felt dizzy and her vision turned dark. Zhuo Qingxian grinned as he smashed her into the wall. Feng Wu, you think too highly of yourself. How dare you seduce Jun Linyuan? Don't you know that he belongs to Qingwan? The last thing you should have done is make Jun Linyuan like you. Now that he's fond of you, he'll never marry Qingwan. We didn't kill you 5 years ago, because Jun Linyuan didn't care about you back then. But now you have to die. If there's another life, pray that you won't meet Zhuo Qingwan again. Die! Zhuo Qingxian now grabbed Feng Wu with both hands and smashed her head against the wall. This time he spared no effort. If he succeeded, Feng Wu would definitely die. The white fairy couldn't watch anymore. Earlier, Feng Wu told her not to help, which was why she had been watching on the side. Now that Feng Wu's life was in danger, she couldn't do that anymore. Whoosh! The white fairy attacked Zhuo Qingxian from behind. She punched him forcibly in his back. Zhuo Qingxian spat out a mouthful of blood and involuntarily dropped Feng Wu. Crash! Covered in blood, Feng Wu fell to the ground. In a normal situation, that height would mean nothing. But she was so fragile now that she almost passed out from the little fall. As she lay there, blood kept bubbling out of her mouth. She then turned to look at Zhuo Qingxian. Zhuo Qingxian was scared out of his wits. He was on guard as he looked around the room. Who's there? Show yourself. Chapter 1869, It Hurts For. Chapter 1869, It Hurts For. The white fairy was a ghost, and she could conceal or show herself as she wished. Therefore Zhuo Qingxian couldn't see her. No matter how much he shouted, the white fairy remained invisible. And that only scared Zhuo Qingxian more. The white fairy didn't show herself because Feng Wu had stopped her, which made the fairy very angry. She scolded Feng Wu in her head. Are you an idiot? Do you see how badly injured you are? Why are you still stopping me? Feng Wu said firmly, I'll kill him. The white fairy wanted to smack Feng Wu on the head. What are you thinking? You want to kill him in your current state? How? With what? Feng Wu repeated, I'll kill him. Frustrated, the white fairy turned to Little Phoenix. Please say something. How can she possibly kill him? This is suicidal. Although the white fairy had been saying harsh words toward Feng Wu, what she didn't realize was that after the past few days, she had recognized Feng Wu as a friend and begun to care about her. Little Phoenix narrowed its eyes. It was obvious that it was fighting back its anger at Zhuo Qingxian. It had loved the girl like its own child since she was little, but Zhuo Qingxian had just knocked her head against the wall. It not only wanted to kill Zhuo Qingxian now, it also wanted to burn the entire Zhuo family to the ground. However, it remembered what its master used to say. The short-tempered bird then fought back its anger and told the white fairy, just let her do what she wants. The white fairy's eyes widened in disbelief. She couldn't understand it. Was Master Phoenix indifferent toward Feng Wu? Of course not. Its face would darken if the fairy said one bad word about Feng Wu. It cared about the girl very much. It's her own trial and her own path to walk. Little Phoenix closed its eyes in pain and mimicked Mu Jiuzhou's tone. If we interfere now, it will only be even harder for her to walk her path in the future. The white fairy was confused. Why is that? Because they had fought against fate and the law of nature when they stole Feng Wu's life back. Of course, Little Phoenix wouldn't tell the white fairy that bit. Unless she's really going to die, just leave it to her. After that, Little Phoenix looked away. It was infuriated. If it wasn't forcing itself to stay put, it would have burnt Zhuo Qingxian to ash by now. Little Phoenix and the White Fairy's conversation took place in their heads, and Zhuo Qingxian had no idea what was going on. Right now, his eyes were still darting around, fearing that the terrifying power would show up again. Blood was still oozing out of Feng Wu's mouth as she lay there, but she suddenly smiled. That little movement was enough to tug at her wounds. Cough, cough. Feng Wu coughed loudly. Zhuo Qingxian frowned and stared at Feng Wu with his cold eyes. It took Feng Wu a long time to stop coughing. She then grinned at Zhuo Qingxian. Zhuo Qingxian, you're scared, aren't you? Zhuo Qingxian stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu fought back her coughs and stared at Zhuo Qingxian's hand. In his right hand was her fallen star sword. Chapter 1870, It Hurts 5. Chapter 1870, It Hurts 5. She had only just raised it to a level 1 weapon. Seeing that Feng Wu was looking at the sword, Zhuo Qingxian smirked. It's called Fallen Star Sword, right? It'll only be a waste with you. It's found its rightful owner now. Don't worry, I'm going to paint the land red with it. Feng Wu asked in a weak voice. Aren't you curious? Don't you want to know why it grew so fast? Zhuo Qingxian narrowed his eyes. It was true. He was very curious. Feng Wu's voice trailed off. Don't you want to know who hit you just then? Zhuo Qingxian was curious about that too. Feng Wu said, Since I'm going to die, if you really want to know, I can tell you, but you have to promise me one thing. After I'm dead, you need to let Chaoga go. Zhuo Qingxian glanced at Duan Chaoga, who was lying in a corner. Chaoga was covered in blood as well. She could neither move nor stand up. Tears ran down her cheeks as she shook her head. Xiaowu, Xiaowu, Xiaowu. All right. If you tell me the truth, I can let Duan Chaoga live, said Zhuo Qingxian. Feng Wu then made another request. After I'm dead, the Zhuo family can't touch my family. Otherwise, I won't tell you anything now. Her voice grew fainter. Her eyelids were getting heavier as well. It seemed that she was going to pass out. And if she did, she probably would never open her eyes again. When that happened, the secret Zhuo Qingxian wanted to know would stay a secret forever. At that thought, Zhuo Qingxian quickly walked up to Feng Wu and crouched down. All right, I won't touch them. Feng Wu nodded. I believe you. You were hit by. She was barely breathing, and her voice was extremely low. By whom? Zhuo Qingxian couldn't hear her. He bent down and moved his ear closer to Feng Wu. It was when Zhuo Qingxian let his guard down. Feng Wu mustered all her remaining spiritual essence. The third stance of the Guardian of the Earth, Ground Control. The third stance of the Fallen Star Sword, Fatal Thunder. Feng Wu suddenly took a dagger out of her sleeve. She raised her arm at an angle that Zhuo Qingxian couldn't see and struck down. The dagger stabbed into the back of Zhuo Qingxian's neck. She made sure that she moved very fast. Everything happened so quickly. And Zhuo Qingxian didn't have time to react. By the time he realized that Feng Wu was getting her revenge, the ground control technique had frozen him for 0.1 second. With that little bit of time, Feng Wu rolled over the ground, away from Zhuo Qingxian. Pop, pop. As a physician, Feng Wu could find all acupoints with great precision. She had made sure that the dagger entered a vital point. When she rolled away, she drew the dagger out with her. Once the dagger was removed, blood gushed out of the wound like water breaking through a dam. Apart from being a vital point, it was also where the main artery was. The blood was now pouring out of Zhuo Qingxian's neck, like an exploding fountain, covering him. Pressing his left hand to the wound, Zhuo Qingxian was dumbfounded. His head had gone completely blank. Chapter 1871, Her Bright Future 1. Chapter 1871, Her Bright Future 1. Looking from the dagger in her hand to the gushing wound on the back of Zhuo Qingxian's head, Feng Wu gradually could think as usual again. After giving Feng Wu a final malicious look, Zhuo Qingxian fell to the ground with a thump. He closed his eyes for good. Xiaowu. Duan Chaoga tried to crawl toward Feng Wu. Feng Wu stumbled toward Chaoga, took a pill out of her pocket, and stuffed it into Chaoga's mouth. Chaoga had been barely breathing before this, but the coagulant improved her condition a little. Phew. Relieved. Feng Wu felt like a broken wagon, and couldn't even sit up. Her bones hurt, her muscles hurt, and her head hurt the most. She touched her forehead, and tears filled her eyes when she found the size of the wound. SSSS. She drew in a pained breath. She was so badly wounded that if she didn't take care of her wound quickly enough, the damage would be permanent. After taking care of Chaoga's injuries, Feng Wu sat down cross-legged and started cultivating right away. The white fairy watched this with wide-open eyes. She looked from Feng Wu to the bird. Did she just cure most of Chaoga's injuries? The white fairy asked in disbelief. Little Phoenix looked at Feng Wu sympathetically. The master would be so sad if he saw his little girl so badly wounded. She's a supreme-level physician. These external injuries aren't a problem for her at all, Little Phoenix said grumpily. The white fairy was the princess of an ancient dynasty, and had seen her fair share of capable cultivators. However, Little Phoenix's indifferent tone still shocked her. A supreme-level physician? Her? A girl? The white fairy opened her eyes wide, and stared at Little Phoenix in disbelief. Little Phoenix rolled its eyes at the white fairy. What's so strange about that? The white fairy didn't know what to say. What was so strange about that? It was very strange. She wasn't just a junior or intermediate physician, but a supreme-level one. There were only a handful of supreme-level physicians on this continent. At her young age, she was already a supreme-level one. Once she grew up, the white fairy's astonishment finally turned into an amazed remark. What a bright future she has. Little Phoenix thought. You don't need to tell me that. She has the greatest master ever. Maybe the girl is only halfway there, and Master Phoenix is exaggerating. The white fairy tried to persuade herself. She couldn't accept the fact that Feng Wu was a supreme-level physician, because she was also a spiritual physician, but after so many years, she was only a master-level physician. Whereas Feng Wu, not only was she better at learning the guardian of the earth, she was also a much better spiritual physician as well. The white fairy realized that she wasn't on the same level as Feng Wu in so many aspects. If Feng Wu really was a supreme-level spiritual physician, Duan Chaoga's injuries would heal in 2 hours. So, if the injuries didn't heal 2 hours later, it would mean that the bird was bragging. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Chapter 1872, Her Bright Future, 2. Chapter 1872, Her Bright Future, 2. The white fairy studied Duan Chaoga carefully, trying to prove that the phoenix had been bragging. Although she didn't dare retort, she still wanted to prove that she was right. Before the 2 hours ran out. Chaoga suddenly woke up from her coma. Her unfocused eyes now looked so clear that they seemed to have been washed with spiritual water. The white fairy didn't know what to say. She couldn't believe it. Things just refused to go the way she wanted. Little Phoenix rolled its eyes at the white fairy. The white fairy returned to herself and smiled awkwardly. So, she really is a supreme-level spiritual physician. Little Phoenix rolled its eyes at her again. Do you know who her master is? Of course she's a supreme-level spiritual physician. The white fairy didn't know what to say. She had never heard that Master Phoenix was an impressive spiritual physician. On the other hand, its master, the great master who could not be named, he was the real legendary spiritual physician. But the white fairy didn't even dare mention him, because that would only defile that sacred name. Just then, after circulating her spiritual essence 3 times over in her body, Feng Wu also slowly opened her eyes. Thump! Her head had been covered with blood and looked a mess. However, as her injuries healed, the lumps of coagulated blood began to fall to the ground. Supreme-level spiritual physicians were indeed as powerful as they were said to be. Feng Wu's medicine was very effective. She had been in such a miserable state just then. Zhuo Qingxian had knocked her head into the wall until there was a saucer-sized wound. But now, the scab had fallen off and new flesh had developed. It was slightly pinker than the skin around it, but soon, it would become the same color. Xiaowu. Seeing that Feng Wu had woken up, Chaoga was over the moon. She immediately ran to Feng Wu's side. Although her wounds had healed a little, she had been weakened by how severe they were, and she almost fell right back down when she stood up. Be careful. Feng Wu caught her by the right arm. Xiao Wu. Recalling what had happened, Xiaoga burst into tears. She had been snatched by Master Ju first, and frightened by Zhuo Qingxian afterward. But only now did she feel the fear. Duan Xiaoga said, Xiao Wu, I'm so glad that you're here. I could have died. Feng Wu patted her head. What do you mean you could have died? Duan Xiaoga, you need to remember something. Duan Xiaoga asked with teary eyes. What is it? Feng Wu said, stay alive no matter what happens. If you die, everything will be over. As long as you're alive, there's always hope. Remember? Xiaoga stared at Feng Wu in bewilderment, and didn't know what to say. Feng Wu said, from now on, no matter what happens, no matter how humiliating life gets, you must stay alive, because I'll come to save you. Remember? To Xiaoga, Feng Wu's words meant everything. Yes. Xiaoga nodded. By the way, Xiao Wu, did you make a lot of progress? Xiaoga seemed to remember something. That bastard Zhuo Qingxian was a spiritual lord. Feng Wu asked curiously, how do you know that? Chapter 1873, Feng Wu playing nice one. Chapter 1873, Feng Wu playing nice one. Duan Xiaoga said, because when he became a spiritual lord, the Zhuo family made such a big fuss about it. They held a feast for 3 days straight, just to announce the good news to the imperial capital. Feng Wu said, I see. Xiaoga said, and that was years ago. Zhuo Qingxian has to be a level 3 spiritual lord at least. Xiao Wu, you've just killed him so. Feng Wu smiled wryly. I'm only a level 7 spiritual elder. Duan Xiaoga couldn't believe her ears. That's impossible. You killed him. Killing someone who was 1 level higher was already hard enough, let alone so many levels. Feng Wu smiled self-mockingly. That's because Zhuo Qingxian underestimated me. I tried to fool him, and he bought it, letting his guard down. Only then did I have a chance to stab him with the dagger. In a normal situation, I wouldn't even be able to breach his defense, let alone kill him. Xiaoga recalled what happened earlier, and realized that Feng Wu was right. Xiao Wu, you're already amazing. You're making breakthroughs at an unbelievable speed. Xiaoga's eyes twinkled. It's only been half a year since you came back to the imperial capital, and you've already risen from a level 1 spiritual master to a level 7 spiritual elder. But Xiaoga lowered her head when she thought about herself. I'm still only a level 8 spiritual grandmaster. I'm so far behind you that I don't know if I'll ever catch up with you. Is there going to be a day when I can't even see you anymore? Xiaoga had always been very tough-minded, but the idea of not seeing Feng Wu made her burst into tears. She cried so hard that she almost had a breakdown. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. The crying gave the white fairy a headache. Does she have to cry so loud? She's going to bring the ceiling down. Feng Wu smiled wryly. She's just too frustrated. Let her cry. It'll ease the pressure. Although, I'm concerned about the same problem. She had been advancing so fast that none of her friends or family could keep up with her speed. That was a little awkward. All of a sudden, Feng Wu's eyes lit up, and she turned to look at the white fairy. Alarmed, the white fairy said, Hey, what do you want now? Feng Wu grinned. Dear fairy, I know you're the best. You've always doted on me, haven't you? Hey, what are you getting at? The white fairy jabbed a finger in Feng Wu's forehead. Are you fawning on me now? Feng Wu made no effort to deny it, and went on, her demeanor reminding one of a puppy wagging its tail. Yes, I am. Dear fairy, please help me. She grabbed the fairy's wide sleeve and swayed it back and forth. The white fairy didn't know what to say. She was a woman, so why was the girl trying to do this with her? However, she really enjoyed it. She then glanced at Feng Wu. So, what do you want? Feng Wu didn't try to hide her intention at all. Pointing at Xiaoga, she said, Dear fairy, you saw what that man almost did to Xiaoga. The white fairy rolled her eyes. Of course she had. Only moments ago, Feng Wu had been holding her sword, trying to kill someone. But once she got what she wanted, she switched back to her girly demeanor again. What a magnificent transformation. Chapter 1874. Feng Wu playing nice too. Chapter 1874. Feng Wu playing nice too. The white fairy poked Feng Wu's smooth forehead. You just can't wait to get your revenge, can you? Feng Wu raised her chin. Of course. I never wait when there's a chance. She was telling the truth. The white fairy nodded. Taking the fairy's hand, Feng Wu said, Dear fairy, if you don't help us, someone will try to pick on Chaoga again. Dear fairy. The white fairy was speechless. Are you holding me responsible now? How does it have anything to do with me? Feng Wu's voice was unbelievably soft. The able ones are expected to be capable of more, right? You own this place. With a flick of your fingers, Feng Sun and Xianyi found such nice prizes. Qiuling is cultivating as well. And Chaoga is the only one who still hasn't gotten anything. I feel so sorry for her. Fine, fine. The white fairy squeezed Feng Wu's smooth cheeks. What do you want her to learn? Feng Wu's eyes lit up. Chaoga practices the homage to Phoenix technique, which was something I created specially for her. But it's no longer enough for her. Feng Wu was furious when she recalled how Zhou Qingxian had been hitting Chaoga when she used the stances from the homage to Phoenix. So dear fairy, can you teach her something more impressive? It'll be wonderful if it comes with movement techniques as well. Wait, she also needs a weapon. If you can find a suitable weapon for Chaoga. Feng Wu grew more and more excited, but the white fairy only wanted to roll her eyes. Stop right there, said the fairy. She glanced at Feng Wu and said impatiently, Why do you have so many requests? Feng Wu looked at the white fairy with a pleading look on her face. Her eyes were so bright and limpid that they could melt the white fairy's heart. However, the fairy would never admit it. All right. The white fairy feigned an annoyed tone. I know where you can find everything in this place, from the techniques to the weapon you need. Feng Wu kept her gaze on the white fairy. Xiao Wu, I don't want to learn other people's skills. I only want yours. Chaoga tugged at Feng Wu's sleeve. Feng Wu covered her mouth. Silence. Chaoga lowered her head and kicked at a little rock on the ground. All right. Feng Wu smiled awkwardly at the white fairy. My sister doesn't know what she's talking about, so don't mind her. She hasn't seen much of the world and has no idea how many capable people there are. But the white fairy only said, That's very impressive. At your young age, you can already create something like the homage to Phoenix. But that technique can only take her as far as the spiritual grandmaster stage. Once she becomes a spiritual elder, the technique won't be enough. You also have to take care of your own cultivation. Where will you find the time and energy to look after her? Have you heard of the name Unflower? The white fairy suddenly asked. Feng Wu's eyes flickered. Are you referring to Miss Unflower, the one who killed people in the middle of the street? The white fairy seemed surprised. You know her? Feng Wu nodded. Yes. Unflower was the daughter of the flower affection race, and was known for her red outfit. She was like a relentless rose, and together with Red March, they were known as the two flowers. The two of them had roughly the same cultivation level. Chapter 1875 Unflower? Chapter 1875 Unflower? Rumor is that her maid was raped and killed by the captain of Emperor Wu's guards. This was when Emperor Wu was still the crown prince. When the then crown prince marched down the main street with his dozens of guards, she landed in the middle of the street and questioned the crown prince, asking him what he would do to the culprit. Embarrassed, Emperor Wu lost his temper. He then told the others to take Unflower down. Unflower was infuriated, and Relentless Flower, her weapon, blossomed in midair. It was only a small flower, but when activated, it expanded endlessly and almost covered the sky above the imperial capital. It's said that this was Unflower's most lethal stance, the world of flower. The bright red petals showered down, and it was a spectacular scene. But each petal was a secret weapon as sharp as a blade. In a matter of seconds, all of the crown prince's guards had fallen to the ground. In the end, the only one left was the crown prince and Meng Ling, his most capable soldier. Unflower then stared at the crown prince and asked the question again. What would he do to the culprit? Feng Wu grew more and more excited as she spoke. The crown prince was both frightened and embarrassed. She was practically slapping him in the face. Unflower then asked the question one more time. What would he do to the culprit? He was surrounded by the petals. It seemed that if he dared to say no, he would be killed at once. It said that the crown prince was infuriated, but there was nothing he could do but say, "The rapist and murderer shall pay with his life." As soon as he said that, the petals surrounded Meng Ling and took him apart piece by piece. Feng Wu's eyes looked like twinkling stars as she said in amazement, "Senior Unflower was already so terrifyingly capable back then. What do you think was the most terrifying thing about her?" asked the White Fairy. Clenching her fists, Feng Wu said in excitement, "Her courage. She wasn't threatened by either the great number of enemies or authority. She was brave enough to question the future emperor in the middle of the street." Feng Wu kept repeating that story in her head. "I'm looking forward to becoming someone like her." Feng Wu nodded solemnly. The White Fairy nodded. "Do you know where Unflower learned her skills?" Feng Wu looked up at the White Fairy with twinkling eyes. Could it be? Could it be? That's right. The White Fairy nodded. Feng Wu's eyes widened. "Dear Fairy, you're so amazing. I admire you so much." At first, Chaoga could follow their conversation, but soon she became confused. Feng Wu tugged at Chaoga and said excitedly, "This is Miss Grand Sister." "Miss Grand Sister?" Duan Chaoga looked dumbfounded. What was she talking about? Feng Wu then gave her a wink. Chaoga might not be the sharpest tool in the box, but she always listened to Feng Wu. She might not have understood what Feng Wu was hinting at, but she still dropped to her knees, prostrated on the ground, and addressed the fairy as Miss Grand Sister. The White Fairy didn't know what to say. She wasn't very happy with Chaoga, because she found her somewhat dumb. However, Miss Grand Sister wasn't a bad name. It made her feel young. Chapter 1876, So Amazing? Chapter 1876, So Amazing. The White Fairy glanced at Duan Chaoga and said grumpily, "To be honest, with your current natural endowments, you're just not good enough to be my disciple. There's no way I'll teach you myself." Chaoga looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Feng Wu smiled. Of course. It'll be a waste of your talent at this stage. There's no need to do that." The White Fairy nodded. "After Unflower died, her soul was sealed in this place. I taught her a few things once, and she always wanted to be my disciple, but I never gave her the chance." Wow! Only then did Duan Chaoga realize how capable the pretty White Fairy was. She counted on her fingers. If she were to call Unflower her master, and the White Fairy was the master Unflower never got to have, so the White Fairy really was quite senior in her ranking. How impressive this White Fairy had to be. Aye. Duan Chaoga didn't know what to say, so she turned to look at Feng Wu. Feng Wu nodded at Chaoga, calming her down. She then turned to the White Fairy and said, "Dear Fairy, please help us with Senior Unflower." The White Fairy mumbled grumpily, "Sure I will." Because the phoenix was still staring at her. Feng Wu looked at the White Fairy in bewilderment. The White Fairy waved her hand. "Don't worry about it. If we don't take care of this girl, you'll never settle your mind and concentrate on your cultivation. If you can't concentrate, I'll be the one who gets the blame. Unflower is a tricky matter. I'll talk to her myself. As for you," she checked the time and told Feng Wu, "your Dantian is still too fragile. Inheriting the seed of the spirit source now will kill you. So your top priority now is to enhance your Dantian. The second chapter of The Guardian of the Earth isn't the only thing in Universe Hall. Something else is hidden there. Come closer." Feng Wu's eyes lit up, and she happily moved closer to the fairy. The White Fairy then whispered something in her ear. "Got it." Feng Wu's eyes were like twinkling stars. "Yes." She clenched her fists in excitement. The fairy then said, "I'll take the girl to Unflower. It may take anywhere from a few hours to a few days. During this time, you'll be on your own. Stay alive." "Yes. Dear Fairy, I know you care about me." Feng Wu beamed at her. The White Fairy glanced at Feng Wu. Before, she couldn't care less about Feng Wu's life. But now, if Feng Wu died, the phoenix would definitely hold her responsible. Moreover, It occurred to her that she now didn't want the girl to die. Of course, the proud white fairy would never admit it. The next second, she picked up Chowga like she was picking up a chicken, and was soon out of sight. With them gone, Fengwu suddenly felt rather lonely. She had already gotten used to spending time with the white fairy. Chapter 1877, Take Her Away. Chapter 1877, Take Her Away. I won't see her again after I leave here. Fengwu sighed. You can take her with you, someone said matter-of-factly behind her. Fengwu turned around and saw that it was Little Phoenix. Frustrated, she rubbed Little Phoenix's head before walking away. Hey, Little Fengwu, I mean it. You can take her away. Seeing that Fengwu was going to ignore what it said, Little Phoenix jumped around her shoulders, trying to catch Fengwu's attention. Fengwu rolled her eyes at the bird. Don't be so naive. Little Phoenix stared at her in disbelief. Did you just call me naive? The bird didn't like the sound of that. Fengwu glanced at it again, before completely ignoring its opinion once more. Hey, Little Fengwu, what's that look on your face? I'm talking to you. Frustrated, Little Phoenix sat down on Fengwu's shoulder and tried to scratch her face. Fengwu sighed. Fine. I'm listening. Cut it out. Cut it out. Little Phoenix didn't like that tone at all. She was treating it like a spoiled child. The bird was very mad. To everyone else, it was Master Phoenix, a creature that even the white fairy feared, but Little Fengwu here seemed to find it querulous. Little Phoenix poked Fengwu's head. Hey, Little Fengwu, haven't you noticed? I'm very capable. Fengwu gave it a look that seemed to say, You're exaggerating again. Resting its wings on its waist and raising its chin, Little Phoenix said proudly, Haven't you noticed that the white fairy is afraid of me? Fengwu didn't know what to say. She gave Little Phoenix a you idiot look. Little Phoenix wanted to see an astonished look, but Fengwu's reaction didn't meet its expectations at all. Displeased, it kicked Fengwu's neck. Hey, why are you looking at me like that? Fengwu heaved a long sigh. I'm trying to think. Can you be quiet for a minute? Little Phoenix was shocked. It stared at Fengwu and said, I'm the famous Master Phoenix. I'm so famous that the entire continent. Fine. You're the famous Master Phoenix that the entire continent reveres. Everyone will kneel down in your presence. Although that was the truth, the way Fengwu put it made it sound like Little Phoenix was bragging. Whatever. Little Phoenix emphasized once more. You really can take the white fairy away with you. Although she's short-tempered and not all that capable, at your current stage, she can be helpful to you. Fengwu gave Little Phoenix an indescribable look. Short-tempered, not all that capable, can be helpful. She was the white fairy. She used to be one of the top masters on this continent. Why was the bird saying that she wasn't all that capable? She said in amazement. Do you know an expression? Little Phoenix asked. What expression? Fengwu said. A heart loftier than the sky. That's what you have. You just called a powerful being like the white fairy mediocre. Master Phoenix, do you realize that you're only a spiritual elder? That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.